All right, so welcome everybody. The board just met in executive session to consider matters regarding proposed, pending, or current litigation. We're going to start tonight with our audit committee. So we'll start with the internal audit. Oh, you want to start with? Go ahead, you can start. Yeah, of course. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to report to the Board of Education that for the year ending 22-23, we had a very low exception rate. For the whole entire year, for the 12 months, we had a total of 16 exceptions reported with 6,677 checks processed. And to say that many of the checks have at least 3 to 10 invoices per check. We're talking about possibly over 20,000 invoices that are processed within the year. So I would like to to commend not only Jamie and his staff for all the hard work that they do in trying to stay in compliance with the general municipal laws and our own purchasing policy within North Shore schools. It's a very, very impressive low number, and the district should be proud of that. So if the check error percentage was 0.18% of 1%, so which is almost unheard of. And the dollar error percentage is even less of, it's 0.018% of 1%. So, and I put together the couple of months that we have had already this past year, and we had 4 exceptions out of 1,685 checks processed, with a check error percent of 0.26% of 1%. So we're trending along the same lines, and I don't see any regard for any alarms, and a dollar error percentage of 0.032% of 1%. So is there any questions from the board?
Fortunate enough tonight to have Andrew here, our audit committee member.
Don't need this so much tonight, but given that very low exception rate, I don't think there can be any questions.
Yes, exactly. So, but it's a pleasure coming to the district, and the interactions that go on between myself and the staff, and how they strive. If I find something that I want, just a little extra documentation in a package, what they go through to make sure that we get it. And if they don't get it, it winds up on my report. And as you can see, with such low exception rates, that they do get the job done, and trying to make it a perfect package. So
Excellent. Thank you so much. Congratulations to everyone in your office. The microphone.
It is everybody in the office, not me. So that's who I'm proud of, and they do an amazing job. So I inherited a great group of people who do wonderful things.
That's great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, and happy holidays, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, next up.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Welcome.
I believe you have a copy of our report. I just want to check whether you have a copy of our status report. It's a smaller packet. It just describes where we are with the internal audit function. So I believe you have a copy. If not, I have a hard copy here. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. First, I want to introduce myself. I'm Dimitri Vantilescas. I'm a partner of your internal audit team, from Noraki Smith. I'm here today to present where we are with the internal audit function and also provide a summary of the most recent audit that we did, regarding the special education cycle. So first off, a very brief summary of the internal audit services that we provided for the fiscal year 22-23. We are in compliance with the internal audit function as we perform a cycle review on the human resources, and we also did our annual risk assessment update. So that's a positive thing, as we are in compliance, with the internal audit function as required by the state. Now, based on the latest risk assessment update and our latest audit committee meeting, it was requested to review the internal controls over the special education cycle. And that's why we're mainly here. And we presented here a summary showing you what the objectives are, which is a review of the internal controls in the special ed related services, and making sure that the procedures are accurate and duties are properly performed. The areas that we covered in this special ed cycle included the general governance, the planning procedures, the record keeping, requests for proposals for professional services, for related services, the STAC application process, and the Medicaid reimbursements. The audit benchmarks that we have listed here, including, initial planning with the business office and the special ed department, issuing our document request, interviewing key people that are involved in the process, obtain and analyze documents, from both the business office and the special ed department. And, we prepared a draft report for you with the areas that I just mentioned, and also in the report are attached exhibits, with narratives of the detailed procedures, the way we observed them and, learned during the course of our audit. And in the report, we also have a summary of our observations and recommendations. Now, sorry. If you go to the third page of the executive summary is where we have listed our observations and recommendations. We have an observation regarding the general governance, where we would like, the department to develop its own documented procedural manual. It does follow the procedures required by the state education department, but it's a good tool for the district as a whole, but also for the department to have these procedures documented. In our experience, it serves as a training, a tool, for people that may come in, but it also describes, what the responsibilities are for each person involved in that process, from the beginning to the end. Another recommendation that we had pertained to the STAC, reimbursement process. Based on our analysis and our testing, we noted certain instances with lack of documentation, that we weren't able to verify, the salary and benefits specifically for in-district, high-cost students. So the recommendation is to, maintain this documentation, like the salary and benefits information, and making sure that that information is also reflected correctly when when we report to the state, to the STAC application process. And we also noted some differences between the invoices and the high cost applications and the automated verification listing for certain private high cost students. So there were these types of discrepancies, we referred back, to the department to, review, why, we have, certain, reporting, discrepancies. But, these were primarily observations and recommendations. Overall, the process, or the internal controls, we believe they're adequate. We don't believe, the district has a high risk. Actually, in our report, we represent it as a low risk. The people who are involved in the process know, their duties, understand what the state regulations are, and they are followed. So, these exceptions that we noted, it's more about enhancing the existing environment and making it better. So our audit opinion in this area is satisfactory. But, we believe by the time we come again, for the risk assessment update, like these recommendations can be implemented. Any questions so far?
High cost in any way affected by the fact that we have St. Chris in our district and we put the money out for those private placements before we get reimbursed? There's a lag time. Could that be skewing the high cost of private education?
The high costs are determined, based on the CSE meetings that they have and the services that they're required to serve, to help, the student. And there are certain formulas by the state that are driven, what can be reimbursed and what cannot be reimbursed. We didn't see any lag in respect to providing the services, getting the invoices or, reporting to the state. The areas of improvement that we see are mostly with the numbers, like how they are calculating the salaries for in-district high-cost students and how they're reported to the state.
Not get reimbursed from the city of New York until the following budget year. So there is a gap between the incurrence of the expense and the reimbursement of the expense. So when you're talking about calculating, the business office calculating what the cost is for reimbursement, my question is, does that lag in any way impact their ability to reflect those numbers? Because it may be skewed looking like we are not getting reimbursed or not putting in for reimbursement because the reimbursement vehicle is different and is a year behind when we incur the expense. Does that make sense?
I understand your question, and I believe the system has, New York State has its own schedule of when to reimburse school districts, and they don't reimburse all at once. They reimburse in quarters, and that's the lag that we see between when we claim and when we get reimbursed. Sorry, yeah.
The payment that we're receiving from St. Christopher from New York City doesn't impact in terms of what we're filing the forms on a timely basis, and what we're getting back from them, or even another district, a district where we have a student going, doesn't impact the calculation that he's talking to. We're reporting those as receivables as we're going to get them regardless. So it doesn't impact this calculation. If you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of what had happened here was they utilized salaries because we were in negotiations, and they used prior salaries and then had to update and didn't go back to update the salaries for some of the teachers that were, and did it and then didn't realize they never went back to update. And I don't know if that's a fair representation of kind of what happened, but something we should have been on top of and corrected going forward.
Jamie, you are correct. Like, that was the reason why we saw these in-district high cost discrepancies, so, the information at hand at that time when they submitted to the state, was not reflecting the true results from the negotiations.
Are they able to go back and collect on that?
They are, and they've
Okay.
already, I believe they've already gone, once we received the report, they went back, and if they haven't finished the process yet, they have already started correcting those items.
That is also something that we mentioned in the report, and also in this executive summary, we have a language that subsequent to our review, the district did take corrective action and, corrected the AVL listings, in their applications to the correct amounts.
Thank you. Thank you for the report and the summary. I had a couple questions. The first one is, this year, as the board, of course, knows, and as the public knows, we've undertaken, as one of our goals for the board this year, is to review the special ed program. So this dovetails well with that, but I think it's just important to be clear for me, and also for those who are watching, that really the purpose of your audit is about the what, and not really an evaluation of the how, meaning the strength of the services, the way we deliver our services, the impact it has on students. That's a separate issue than what you have been tasked with looking at and have reported in this report.
That is correct.
Okay. I thought that was an important point to clarify. I also want to just ask a separate question, which is, so this is inherently, I've been doing this a while, so I have a sense of the way you rate these things, so that the way the industry rates these things. Special ed is an inherently moderate degree of risk, and the assignment, or I guess the evaluation that you've given for North Shore, is that we have a low level. So I think that's really, that's a good place to be. That we have a low level of risk in an area that has inherently moderate level of risk.
That is correct. And just for educational purposes, right? High risk means that absent of any controls, absent of any policies or procedures or oversight, there's going to be a high risk that something may go wrong. So in the special ed, it could be that we may not provide the services that the IEP has stated, or we may not, charge timely, or ask for reimbursement timely to the state or to Medicaid. So based on our assessment now, we reviewed the controls. We spent a lot of time with interviews and reviewing records, and our assessment is low, which is the indication that the district has policies, procedures, oversight, checks and balances, documentation to support, the services and the actual reimbursements or charges.
My question then becomes, against that backdrop, I understand the benefit of implementing different departmental procedural manuals, but I guess I also wondered, just from my vantage, that school districts and the amount of work that we do are, to some degree, have an element of bureaucratic depth that is, for an organization of this, necessary, but also can be somewhat cumbersome. So I guess the question is, in your evaluation of recommending a certain procedure like this, which we saw a lot in the HR evaluation as well, is there a way to evaluate the degree to which implementing additional, somewhat bureaucratic procedures on top of an organization that maybe is already kind of performing at a good level could even to some degree be counterproductive to the overall ability to perform that function? Or if it's always necessary to, or inherently good to add more layers?
More experience, being internal auditors in various organizations, school districts, towns, villages, even non-for-profits, where some controls are, in a smaller environment, right? The documented procedures are a big asset, that describes, how things are done, because, people can leave, as we have experienced, and, you want to train a new person and you need something, to give to that person. And if somebody who had institutional knowledge and leaves, now it's becoming available. So you're leveraging against that risk, and for the special ed, we provided narratives, exhibits that could be something to be utilized, by your department as a jumpstart. So we're not really trying to add more work, to your people. We're trying to assist them, by providing these tools as well.
Just wanted to make a point of clarification. Dave, you said that the inherent risk rating was moderate, but according to this report on page 7, it's actually high. So
Here you go.
it's even more meaningful that we have a low risk rating, right? I mean, maybe you can explain, because the inherent risk rating is high and the control risk rating for us is moderate. So what does that mean exactly? Is that because, no,
I wanted to clarify
Yeah.
at the very bottom of this page 3, you'll see the 3 columns: inherent risk, control risk, and audit opinion. Inherent risk means that, for the school district industry in the special ed department, this is a high risk, for school districts. But your control risk, for North Shore is low. So, we're not saying, that you have a moderate risk area. Okay.
I figured that's what you meant. I just wanted to clarify.
No, we have recommendations, but just because we have recommendation doesn't always necessarily raise to like a moderate risk level. There are recommendations even in a low risk, environment, but that's because there's always room for improvement.
Sounds like we are, really on top of things. And that actually brings me to my next question about the procedural manual. I'm just curious why you're recommending a procedural manual specifically for special ed when, and, this is just for my knowledge. I don't know the answer. I'm just wondering, we have so many policies and procedures. I know we have some that are specific to special ed. Would it make sense to just add to those some that, like, are we missing some there, or you want us to have a completely separate manual for the special education department?
So
Or recommend.
we're asking, a procedural manual for the special ed department. A lot of departments in the school districts are heavily regulated. So look at extra classroom activity funds, right? Totally different department. There are tons of policies from the commissioner regulations, from your own district policies. There is a pamphlet available from the New York State Education Department. There's forms in place, right? But there are so many people looking for those procedural manuals, something to help them go through the steps one by one. So sometimes the policies are great to give a direction, but the procedural manuals helps us also for the day-to-day operations. So that's where we see the need, to have the procedural manual, not only to provide governance, but also to provide guidance on the day-to-day, procedures and operations.
What is both, obviously they're following all these procedures and they're doing what they need to do because you've done this research and they're already following the procedures that they need to follow. So what is in place now that helps them do that?
There are procedures that they're following, they're knowledgeable of these, policies, but it's not documented. So to document it or utilize the narratives that we have is something that, can help the department.
Part of the issue is that special ed, right, within the last, I don't know how many decades, has become incredibly legalistic, right? So much of the job of people who work in special ed is following the ever-changing special education laws, right? And so many, there's such high potential for lawsuits and these types of things if you violate any of those, for instance, dates that pass, right? In some ways, I understand what you're saying in terms of a procedural manual more for this department than you would for others.
if the laws are ever changing, then we probably should just be looking at the law, because then the policy manual will be ever changing. I'm sure there is a place online that they're looking at now that, they're following all of the new documentation and new.
Once it's like having an employee handbook, right? If you have an employee handbook, if someone makes a complaint, then you have an employee handbook, right? And it helps you in terms of liability. So to have it documented and the procedures all in one place is never a negative. It's only a positive in terms of anyone questions what they're doing, if we're getting the proper reimbursement, if we're paying all this money out for special education, are we getting the proper reimbursement? It can't hurt. And as Dimitri is saying, you have turnover. People leave. We're fortunate we don't have a lot of turnover in our business office, but eventually people do retire. And it's nice to have a handbook there, and nothing says it can't be updated with the changes as they go along. Always good to have a reference manual.
Exactly, Mariam. If Beata were to quote who handles a lot of the paperwork and the filings, and she was out for 3 weeks, somebody may not be able to just step in and say, "Oh, that's right. On the 15th, we have to do this and have a clear, basically an instruction manual of what she does on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, who approves what." So it's really just to put all that information that's being done correctly, but some of it's in the heads of the people that are actually doing the job. So
I think my point is not to argue that those manuals aren't necessarily helpful. I just know from my experience running an enterprise, one of the pitfalls of that is sometimes you could be working for the manual, and I think that's just something to keep our eyes on.
It's a heavy task, for somebody to draft it, and that's what we see normally, right? With any client, any audit that we do. But that's why we're here. That's why we think it's valuable to put it together, and utilize and give it it's a Word document and is shared. You can update it as needed.
And as President McCary said, in a dynamic environment like this, it's constantly in need of that updating.
Get the Medicaid, the compliance are stringent and exhausting, so it's constantly monitoring, do you have your session notes? Do you have your prescription notes? And so it takes a lot just to get reimbursed by the federal government.
I'm actually a big proponent of manuals too, but I don't have to write this one, so I understand the questions. I just wanted to go back to something that has come up in the couple of years that I've been on the board that I asked a while back, but I just think it's worth, since we've been trying to clarify these concepts of high, medium, low, and the ultimate result of your effort on page 3 is your audit opinion, right? That's sort of your final stamp of your research, and your opinion is satisfactory, which, as I recall, in accounting speak, is one of the, if not the highest. It's actually fairly high praise. Satisfactory.
That is correct.
Is a big word. It's a good word.
There are other opinions that you can see lower grades, needs improvement, right, or unsatisfactory. But satisfactory is you get the golden star,
It's a uniquely interesting vocabulary in your industry, but so I always think it's worth pointing out that not only do we come in as a control risk of low against an inherent risk of high, we are satisfactory, aka gold star.
Yes. This is the audit standards that we follow. So yes, that's our opinion. Satisfactory.
Other questions or comments?
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to prepare such a detailed report. I did have a couple questions, but just one observation on your manual. I'm not a lawyer, I'm generally scared of lawyers, to be honest.
Take it that
But
way.
well, inherent in the job. But having this manual, would that sort of protect the district from potential lawsuits by having some documentation as opposed to just seat of the pants type of procedures? So I think that there's some value in that. I think that's what we see, certainly at our university. Okay. A couple questions on the audit report, and Roger's not here, so I'll be the bearer of all the news. So number one, the sample period here was 2021, 2022, tail end of COVID period. I mean, do you see this year as being anything other than, atypical for any particular reason, or fairly representative for what you'd see in any other year?
So thank you for the question. There's a reason why we selected 21, 22, because we needed to see a full cycle in the special ed from like the claims all the way to the reimbursement. Had we selected 22, 23, we wouldn't be able to see the reimbursement side, because as we mentioned earlier, it takes a whole full year plus, to get reimbursed. And that's why we selected that fiscal year. Now, I think you also had a second question about, was this like something that we see from other like similar findings with other districts? Am I correct?
Would you expect, if we looked at, 2021 or 2018, 2019, see any variances, or would you expect this again to be this particular year, 2021, 2022, representative?
Well, I would think 21, 22 could be a normal representation of the district's special ed procedures, whereas COVID years 19, 20, 2021 were very challenging for special ed providers to meet the IEP standards. And I don't believe, had we selected those years, will reflect the district's operations. I think you have an excellent team where to process all this applications, all this information, and submit reimbursements to the state. It was challenging not just for North Shore but for other districts as well, those prior years. So I think 21, 22 was a good year to look at, this.
Thank you. And a follow-up question. So I'm sort of glad to hear the conclusion, satisfactory, but I have to admit, upon my initial reading of the report, I was a little bit troubled when I read observation or recommendation number 2. So that has a risk rating of moderate. That's on page 5. And, I'll just quote it just to get the flavor. Due to the lack of documentation, we were unable to verify the reported salary and benefits for teachers, teachers' aides, therapists, etc., for 8 out of the 10 high-cost students. So I think anyone would be troubled to hear I cannot verify salary and benefits, and then to hear for 8 out of 10 instances, that is a bit troubling on the surface. And maybe you can talk a little bit about why that is, or what the cause or corrective action. You did put a risk rating of moderate, so definitely something caught your eye.
Yes, of course. And this is something that we mentioned earlier. So this pertains to the in-district high-cost students. And the district, submits an application, a stack application for reimbursements. Now, these costs are really concentrated on salaries and benefits. At that time, when the district submitted the stack application, we're relying on salaries and benefits, based on their existing contract, and didn't include the terms of the negotiated contract for which the service providers, the teachers, the special ed teachers were currently paid from. So that was the reason. that we had these discrepancies. And it was, pretty much the majority of the teachers or the, individuals that we saw on the reported claims. Now, the corrective action was, we did identify the reason. The corrective action is now the special ed department has gone to these applications, updated, the cost and resubmitting it for reimbursement. Now, going forward, as we discussed with the department, is that, when we enter these applications is to make sure that their numbers are based on the current, contracts. If there's any negotiations in place, those should be consulted between, the director of special ed, HR and payroll.
Thank you for that response. So is this entirely based on teachers and aides that are working for the district, so they're salaried, or is this from outside contractors or combination?
So some students is a combination, like, in-district employees, like teachers and teacher aides, and some students needed, like therapists that are outside contracted. But we didn't see any discrepancies with the outside contractors for the in-district high cost students. I think it was more concentrated on the district employees, pertaining to their salaries and benefits.
And was there a dollar amount that you could put on that, or is that the table on the following page 6, the cumulative difference of 36,352?
That is for a different selection. That's for the selection that we had for private high cost students. Those private high cost students are serviced by different schools that we have listed here. And the invoices that they submitted, when compared to the stack applications, they're different. And these are the ones that we could have quantified. That's why you see a dollar amount. For the in-district with students, where we saw that we couldn't quantify it, we didn't have the documentation to do that reconciliation analysis.
Seems a little unsettling to me, though.
May I interject that I think this to me is a perfect example of why a procedural manual would be helpful, right? This is exactly the kind of, explainable error that had there been a reminder in the manual to, something that's highlighted to instruct the people who are providing this information to, double check current salaries, or, make a note that they have to go back once the contract is settled. I mean, we negotiate every few years, so this could theoretically happen again.
This recommendation could be part of your procedural manual.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's my point. Yeah. Because I think you're right, Andrew. I mean, but I think there is a solution that is at least partially underway already.
There are questions or comments?
Question, in terms of the resubmission to the stack reimbursement process, that is happening now.
I believe it's already completed.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Too, thank you so much for these excellent questions. I think it was nice to hear your feedback, provide you some information about, the cycle audit. Just a quick reminder that we will be back at the district to do our annual risk assessment update. We're planning that to start in February. So, that's part of our internal audit function again, like, we do the cycle and then, the risk assessment.
Thank you. Have a very happy holiday.
Happy holidays, happy new year. Hope you spend it with your family and enjoy the time.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you.
And thank you, Andrew.
Happy holidays, Andrew.
So we'll give everyone a second to come on in. I see we have lots of people waiting for us, and we will transition to the regular meeting. I think Betty just went. Uh. So if everyone can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We also have a sign language. We're very special today. Okay, ready? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I think Dr. Z has a special treat for us.
Thank you, Miss Grace Ryan. Good to see you. And we have some other students here as well. We have our high school madrigals to sing us some holiday tunes under the direction of Mr. David Catalano. Thank you, Mads, for being here. Did you guys just come from a party? Come on.
They can face the audience. We're used to seeing everyone's backs. Yeah. You guys have some good energy right now. We need it. We've been in a meeting since way too long already. Oh my gosh, you guys don't play. That was amazing. That made my week. You guys we are proud to have you as part of our school. You are representing us so amazingly. So have a wonderful holiday and break and relax. Do some reading. Yeah, for pleasure. All right, thank you guys so much. Have fun, and for those of you who this is a very big week for, good luck. Yeah. All right. I won't say it out loud, but we're all rooting for you guys. All right, thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank you, Mr. Catalano. Thank you, Magical.
That was so much fun. All right, excellent. Okay, so trustees, let's move on. I mean, this is our last meeting of 2023, so that marks something important. We have our achievement reports tonight. We're going to be approving a lot of important positions and contracts. Let's start with the approval of minutes. We're looking at November 30th and December 5th. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or amendments?
Just, I have to thank Betty this time more than ever because the way you summarized what all of our questions were in the last one where we had a presentation, and then all of the answers, it was it was a great reminder. I mean, I actually do look back at the minutes every once in a while, and it's going to be so helpful. Thank you.
Others? Seeing none, we will accept the minutes as is. Now on to action 5, the treasurer's report, September 2023. Any motion? Okay, any questions or comments? Go
I
ahead.
have one on this too. It's really just it's kind of just a note for Jamie in the office. I was noticing all over again, well, let me back up for a second. About a little over a year ago, was when we approved the new the NICLAS investment pool becoming a part of that in order to get more favorable interest rates. And I guess we must have then been able to, we started up in the pool within a few months after that, right? Yeah. Sorry.
October.
Right. So this will be our first full year in that class. And I was just wondering if maybe it's premature to put this out there, but I was wondering if at the end of the year, or if you've noticed yet, had a chance to sort of evaluate, is it in fact giving us, what we had hoped for, a significantly higher rate of return? Is it actually making a difference?
It has, and it's also allowed us to not tie up in long-term. It gives similar rates to those that you would have tied up in a longer-term CD. So it allows us still the flexibility of getting, while still making, the interest that we maybe would have gotten if we tied the money up in a longer CD. So it has been very positive.
At the time that we were evaluating it, or that you were, making us aware of it before we approved it, the interest rates were about a full point different. They were quite a bit higher. Not maybe quite a bit, but significantly,
Some that we're
noticeably
getting in
higher.
other accounts, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
All in favor? Thank you. Action 6, claims and audit report. We're looking at November's report, 2023, without looking how many exceptions, trustees? Oh, motion. I'm off my game today. I think it was the Grinch. It was the Grinch. Did you get the second, Betty? Yeah. How many exceptions?
Look, it's $9.3 million, 705 checks, and 0 errors.
Not
And I
bad.
was thinking, we're bookending tonight. We had those amazing students. We're going to be talking a lot about students in a minute, but it's also worth noting right here that the confidence we as a community can have as taxpayers that we're paying for this in a way that's done with that level of responsibility, I think is worth noting. So you're on your game, President McKay.
Well, I have nothing to do with it. All right. All in favor? All right, great. It is time for Miss Ava DeFeo, our SGO president. What have you brought us tonight, Ava?
Right. Well, I was approached by Mr. Lang last week. He's the athletics director, and he came to me. He heard my comments about food drives, and he came to me suggesting a food drive basketball game because the men's basketball games get really busy and really exciting, the varsity games. So he suggested a basketball game that is themed, like whiteout or blackout or some sort of like exciting theme, and then having an entry fee of a non-perishable good, and then also having like maybe raffles or something fun to do, like to get people bringing stuff and bringing the energy. So I've been in contact with him about that. We haven't picked a date for that yet, but we're anticipating early to mid-January. We're trying to look for a weekend, maybe like a Friday night. So we're working on that. And then I also started a Candygram activity at the high school because I was trying to brainstorm things to boost morale. And with the help of the rest of the SGO, we came up with Candygrams, which is like sending candy canes to teachers or other students, like just to say happy holidays, just to say thank you, something little and something sweet that will mean a lot to someone. So we're starting that next week. Monday and Tuesday is going to be like the send-in days, and then we're going to distribute them Thursday and Friday. and there'll be like little messages saying happy holidays. And then just the basic stuff is the sports night, which is coming up in February. We're still picking a date for that, determining themes and figuring out posters and collaborating with the arts department about bringing that together.
Not bad. Very good. Any questions for us or any other concerns? All right.
President McCarry, can I just say, I was at the basketball game last night. It was very tight at halftime.
Yeah.
But then we took off in the second half and won by quite a bit. They are electric, and that's a great opportunity.
We played a rival like 2 weeks ago, Locust Valley, and I think more than half of the upperclassmen ended up going to Locust Valley just for that game. So I think it'll bring a lot of revenue in.
Excellent. All right. Go home. Good luck.
Thank you.
Study. All right. Next, we have the report from our superintendent. Dr. Z, what do you have for us today?
Thank you, Ava. Great job as always. I want to congratulate all of our students who've been participating in our winter concert series. We've been at many of them. The performances at all levels were so impressive and a testament to our tremendous music educators and the dedication of our families to the music program. Last evening's high school concert 2 was truly amazing and a testament to the high standard that we set for our music learning at the highest levels. I urge all parents, especially our younger parents of younger students, to watch last night's concert so that you can see how far your students will grow. Just Google North Shore Fine and Performing Arts YouTube, and all of the videos have been live streamed and they're recorded. Mr. Catalano, Mr. Bromsey, and Mr. Domingo did something called the Philharmonia. It was all 3 ensembles together singing several songs. Truly amazing and innovative, represents who we are and who we want to be. It's an amazing community. So thank you all. The district's so happy to welcome Miss Elaine Dugan to the Glen Head Elementary School as the interim principal for the remainder of the 23-24 school year. Elaine has over 17 years experience as the principal of Sylvan Avenue Elementary School in the Bayport Blue Point School District and 38 years of experience in education overall as a teacher, department chairperson, assistant principal, and principal. She is a student-centered instructional leader who has successfully built relationships with faculty, staff, and families over the last 2 decades in a school community that's actually very similar to North Shore. We will begin our search for the permanent principal of Glen Head School in early February, and all stakeholders will be involved, beginning with meetings with parents and teachers to build a leadership profile in February. So we're excited for Ms. Dugan, and our new director of math will be appointed tonight, Dr. Kimberly Mattis, who is here with us this evening. Over the past 17 years, Kimberly has worked in the Hewlett-Woodmere schools and has served as the P-12 Director of Mathematics in Hewlett-Woodmere since 2022. She's an energetic and positive leader who shares our special vision for teaching and learning, and we're very excited to welcome her into the North Shore family. Thank you to our parent organizations for all of their support that they give our schools, administrators, and faculties. They've been giving every parent organization special appreciation lunches for each building. You might have seen some food trucks at the middle school last Friday. It was also the same day that we kicked off the Therapy Dog Initiative that was sponsored by the middle school PTS. So it was an amazing day, and it's been an amazing few weeks. Thanks to our parent organizations. Thank you for all that you do. Our technology committee met for the second time this year, and we've had powerful conversations about the role of technology in our students' lives, inside and outside of school. We are sharing research together. We have some amazing parents on this committee, a lot who work in deep tech, I've been calling it, who have very interesting views on the role of technology, very smart views. So we're doing great work, and they're gonna play a major role in the presentation we do on February 8th about the role of technology in our students' lives. I wanted to announce, and everybody in the district will be getting a postcard soon on UPK registration for the 24-25 school year. It will take place between February 1st and March 1st. To be eligible, students 4 years of age who turn 4 years of age between before December 1st, 2024, meaning their birth dates are between December 2nd, 2019 and December 1st, 2020, are eligible to participate as long as they are residents of the district, and they must register with Catherine Miller. We'll send out more details. We anticipate a similar amount of grant money and running a similar program size that we did this year. So we're excited for that. It's been a great program, and we'll be updating the board on UPK and the status of it and what's going on there in a few meetings from now. And I want to thank Mr. Gordon is here. He's been helping us with UPK in addition to his K through 12 social studies duties. So thank you, Mr. Gordon. We have some great parent universities coming up January 4th, right after the break, on mindfulness, elementary math, and supporting your child, February 7th. The band program on March 5th, nutrition, April 30th, and May 6th on technology. So we're really excited for that. And finally, just a couple of announcements about athletics. I don't know if we've talked about it here, but we have a ice hockey team that we're sponsoring with Friends Academy. Mr. Gordon is actually involved in that with Mr. Lang. And it's been great. And they have some games this weekend, tomorrow. It's amazing. And so we're really excited for that, to keep that partnership going. There's a big wrestling tournament with our wrestlers at Cold Spring Harbor, the Battle at the Harbor, it's called, on Saturday. And both our girls and boys basketball teams will be playing Seaford this weekend. The girls will be home and the boys will be away. So we're excited for a great weekend of sports, and wishing everyone a very happy holiday season. Thank you.
Lots happening here. And I gotta tell you, gotta go on Instagram. There are some great PR for all the events that you're talking about. Like, the pictures really are amazing. So I encourage everyone, if they're not on Instagram, to see it. Okay, so let's get started. We have two presentations tonight: humanities and world languages, as well as our English language learners being part of the world languages presentation. So do you want to start with humanities, or it's up to you?
Yeah, it's
So-
all in one presentation.
Okay.
So I have to say, I want to thank in advance Dr. Smythe, Ms. Anna Aguiar-Mady, our Director of World Languages and ENL, Ms. Julie Ritter, our Director of Literacy, and Mr. Gordon, our Director of Social Studies. Notice I'm not saying this year 6 through 12 or secondary. Their roles have changed, and they're doing amazing work for the district in a system-wide role. We so appreciate it. We've had, I'll just say, many rehearsals for this presentation. They've done such amazing work behind the scenes in preparing these reports. And so we're really excited for a very special presentation. So Dr. Smythe, take it away.
Okay, perfect.
So thank you for this opportunity to report to you on student achievement in the humanities this evening. We are very excited to share the work we have been doing with you. I'd like to introduce three of our directors: Ms. Anna Aguiar, our Director of World Languages and ENL, Seth Gordon, our Director of Social Studies, Business, Family and Computer Science, and UPK, and Julie Ritter, our Director of English Language Arts, Library and Literacy. We're going to start the presentation, and I'm really excited that you'll be able to see and get a glimpse into some of the behind-the-scenes work in terms of our student achievement. So I'd like to turn it over to Anna.
Thank you, Dr. Smythe. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here tonight as we share and celebrate the happenings within our respective departments. My colleagues and I will begin our presentation by reviewing our standardized and normed assessment data, highlighting some areas of strength and areas of focus. I will start us off this evening with world languages. So for world languages, New York State no longer creates a checkpoint A and B assessment. As a district, we join NASALA and Connie, two professional organizations that create the state-approved tests at these checkpoints. We have 100% passing rate at both checkpoints. Mastery rates continue to be high, and we have seen an increase in some of the languages. As we consider our areas of strength, 3 areas stand out. The interpersonal mode of communication, which is spontaneous speaking. Our students continue to show growth in this mode of communication. This demonstrates their strength in listening to one another, negotiating and interpreting meaning when having a conversation. Students completed 2 interpersonal tasks. They were provided with a statement to indicate the purpose and setting of the conversation before beginning. For the presentational mode of communication, the spoken component, the students demonstrated their ability to present information, concepts, and ideas to inform, explain, persuade, and narrate on a variety of topics. In the interpretive mode of communication, we saw strengths in 2 areas. In the skill of listening, students demonstrated strength in their ability to understand, interpret, and analyze what is heard in various passages. And in the skill of reading, our Latin students demonstrated strength in interpreting prose narratives designed for reflecting the grammar at their checkpoint. Now, as we turn our attention to areas of focus, we continue to work on both the interpretive and the presentational modes of communication. To strengthen our students' facility with their interpretive reading skills, we are embedding additional authentic resources, short readings, and novels. We are working to strengthen their inferential skills. Specifically, we need our students to be able to read between the lines, including an understanding from within the cultural perspective of the target culture. And our second focus is developing our students' presentational writing skills. It's not writing exclusively to practice vocabulary or time frames, but rather communicating with purpose, where they express feelings, give an opinion, tell a story, and express hopes. Furthermore, our students need to learn to tailor their communication to their intended audience. We also continue to monitor the universal implementation of digital portfolios, which is something that I will talk about later in the presentation. I now welcome Julie Ritter up to speak about English language arts.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to present my report on student achievement. There's nothing I love more than sharing the work we're doing in English language arts and literacy departments, so I really appreciate being here. The dominant conclusion from the 2023 assessment data is that our students are thriving in English language arts. The regional gap confirms that our students continue to outperform their regional counterparts in all standardized ELA tests, grades 3 through 8 and 11, and by an outstanding average of 21.7%. The trend analysis shows that grades 4 and 5 ELA assessment proficient and exceeding proficiency scores grew substantially compared with 2022, rising by an amazing 15.9 and 23.2% respectively. The equity report celebrates our greatest source of pride. 100% of our special ed students pass the English regions. That success speaks to the talent and commitment of our secondary English teachers as well as the collective efforts of all grade levels across all 5 buildings. When tracking the progress within cohorts, we see that the percentage of students in current grade 4 through 7 who scored urgent intervention on the STAR assessment decreased steadily. For example, the percentage of this year's 7th graders scoring urgent intervention went from 18 to 16 and then down to 13% when they were in 4th, 5th, and 6th grades respectively. Our universal instruction and academic intervention is working. And finally, with regards to content, our students excelled on questions requiring them to analyze the development of themes and central ideas. These standards align with the Thinkers SVOs. Despite the good news, we're committed to continued growth, especially for our special ed and E&L students who underperform as compared to their peers. Therefore, this school year 23-24, we have launched a comprehensive review and revision of our elementary literacy program focused on the science of reading. We hope that as we align our literacy program more closely with research-based practices, we can use this knowledge to identify potential reading difficulties early on, promptly implement targeted interventions, and prevent and address reading challenges before they become more significant. I will speak more in depth about that initiative later. But for now, here is Seth Gordon to speak about social studies.
Thank you, Julie. I'll speak to the social studies growth and strengths, as well as some of our areas of focus for this school year. The first one that I would like to highlight is that our proficient and mastery numbers have greatly increased. Well, I would say definitely in the mastery, but the proficiency I think is remarkable too. 99% of our test takers on the new U.S. history regions and global studies regions reached the passing rate, 100% on the U.S. history exam. Our mastery rates on the global exam were at 37% last year, the year before. This year they were at 64%, which is a 27% increase in mastery. We had outliers last year, I mentioned at the board report, of in the 80 to 84 range. Those still exist statewide, and we still have a significant number, but we did make a lot of progress. But even despite that, the 27% improvement is remarkable. In terms of equity statistics, one of the things we have on here is that all of our E&L students passed the global and U.S. history regions, and every one of them above a 70% on these exams. 100% of our special ed students have passed the U.S. history exam. For performance-based assessments, this is another area of pride in the social studies department. I know some of the board members have had their child go through or are going through the National History Day program, which we continue to enhance and try to improve as we make research available to all students in the discipline. Last year, we also marked the first time where we ran a new Seal of Civic Readiness capstone project, and we offered the Seal of Civic Readiness to all senior students. And I'm proud to report that 174 students were recipients of the Seal of Civic Readiness in this first year. So that's quite remarkable. The areas of focus are also important too as well. I tried to align them to the North Shore Journey as much as I could. And one of the ones of this appreciating differences in self-respect is really about how can we implement civil discourse in the humanities program? How can we work with parents and students to really promote this as something that's a hallmark of our programs? Another part is really, continue to improve our capstone projects. We have teachers work on them each year. Another thing is introducing this mystery source framework, what I've started in PD and work in the summer into instruction, and I've seen elementary teachers already implementing it. Our mastery and proficiency rates are still important, and these new exams are just beginning. So to continue the fine work of our department to try to improve and maintain those. And the other area that's always a goal as this new age is really keeping students as critical consumers of information and media. And I think these are important parts of our program as well to continue to work towards. For the next part of our presentation, we are going to talk about the challenges and solutions and the learning and growth within our disciplines. I would like to welcome Anna Aguiar back to the podium to speak about the World Languages and E&L program. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. So last year we had the opportunity to provide the board with an extensive review of the World Languages program. So this year, as you saw, I shared our current strengths and potential areas of growth. In addition, I will share some of the work we are doing to move us forward based on the goals we established as part of that review. As students move through our world language program, we often talk about their journey on the continuum of language proficiency. A challenge becomes, how can we capture a student's growth over time? So the World Languages Department introduced digital portfolios 3 years ago. Teachers interested in piloting the initiative were supported through professional development opportunities, webinars, and common department meeting time. A digital portfolio offers the opportunity to showcase a student's path to proficiency. Students can compile a collection of their language learning achievements, such as videos, audio recordings, essays, and more. Students can visually see their progress over time, which helps increase their confidence and motivation. It encourages students to reflect on their language learning journey, helping them identify strengths and areas that need more practice. Through reflection, the learners can set meaningful personalized goals, fostering a sense of ownership in their learning. And it allows for student choice and accommodates diverse forms of expression. As a result of our self-study in preparation for the evaluation last year, we established the goal of universal incorporation of digital portfolios into our practice. We began our discussions in April, and then in June of 2023, during our World Language Retreat days, we refined our plan for implementing digital portfolios across our language classrooms, making it an assured experience for all our language students. During the retreat, we defined the purpose and goal, we selected a platform, we created a template, looked at criteria, and studied and analyzed possible rubrics and reflection questions. So we began this school year ready to begin a full rollout for all. At the elementary level, the teachers created Google folders for all the students. And K through 5, the teachers will actually be uploading the evidence. They're collecting evidence in different modes of communication. Students will be able to look at the evidence throughout the year and across their years of schooling to see their progress and talk about their learning. So we can look at some examples. The first video you're going to see is a student presenting about herself using short sentences and varied topics. So in the second video, you can see the student created an original comic strip. There is evidence of their ability to create a dialogue, write the characters, and orally present the story. I will warn you, he recorded a sound, so it's going to come out very loud. At the elementary level, part of the reflection, we're still trying to develop. The teachers have been engaging them in conversations. and we're working towards more of the writing at the upper level. At the secondary level, our students created their own individual portfolios using Google Sites. It has been a very exciting learning process for both the teachers and the students. The students created a homepage where they gave a brief description of themselves. They set goals, and they also talk about why they enjoy learning a language. The portfolio is collecting evidence against the 3 modes of communication. We created tabs at the top. You'll see the tabs. Within those tabs, we have other tabs that for every year that they study language. So eventually there'll be, and within each year, the collection of evidence will be for that particular year. Here is an example of a presentational writing task where the student wrote a letter about school life. The student's reflection highlights their ability to deliver a message at a higher level of sophistication, building on their prior knowledge. This is another example. It's a student choice where they decided to upload a blog and do a reflection more in a question form versus paragraph. The teachers use rubrics like this one in conjunction with other rubrics that include more detailed descriptors. The rubrics can be used for student self-reflection and teacher feedback. As you can see from this rubric, which was completed by one of our students, they're able to identify their own areas of strength and goals. The assured experience we are creating, the development and use of digital portfolios, is a work in progress. Not only do we see its value in capturing student growth and providing opportunities for self-reflection and goal setting, it can also serve to showcase their level of proficiency when pursuing the seal of biliteracy. So our next steps will be to monitor progress and refine process throughout the year, reflect on our progress at the end of the year, and engage in collaborative discussion about the impact of our work and develop next steps and potential revisions. Now I'm going to shift to another passion of mine, our E&L program. Our E&L program services English language learners, providing them with the critical support and advocacy they need as they join and integrate into our school community. Who are our Ls? Our English language learners are children that come to our schools from around the world for a multitude of reasons and speaking many different languages. Many are refugees from war, violence, poverty, oppression, or looking for opportunities they cannot find in their own countries. When we are entrusted to nurture the potential of these children, we are given the gift of having our educational community enriched by the diversity these students bring. We did invite some students tonight to speak briefly, just to share a few words. They're very nervous. So, Isabela y Andrea, por favor. So this Isabela Nakato Silva is a 9th grader at our high school. She's speaking in Spanish. So we translated what she's saying. But try not to look at the translation. Turn it over, see what's next.
Mi nombre es Isabela y me mudé aquí desde Ecuador en septiembre. El primer día de clases tuve muchos sentimientos encontrados y fue como muchos nervios. Me sentí confundida porque no entendía el idioma. Empecé a llorar el primer día porque estaba nerviosa por algo nuevo. Pero luego me puse bien porque recibí mucho apoyo Mis profesores me han ayudado en todo lo que he hecho y me han hecho sentir bien y segura y ser una mejor estudiante y responsable. With my education, I will be able to become a nurse in the future. Thank you for this opportunity to speak here.
And now we have Andrea Fuentes Mena.
Hello, my name is Andrea, and I started school last year in October. The first day of school, I was super nervous, and I didn't know if this was a good thing or for the world want to be here. It was very difficult because I didn't know anyone. I didn't talk to anyone. I looked at everyone else with their friends. I was alone. I did want to continue here because I didn't know who to use a new language. I didn't know what to do, and that made me feel super bad and cry anyway saying it. I didn't understand the class, and that made me feel really bad. But thank you to my teacher that helped me along and support me. I had done everything so that I understand the class. My teacher tried very hard, saying they also not speak my language. They understand me alone, and my education will help me fulfill my dream. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to just acknowledge the secondary ENL teachers are here. They are their lifeline. So Amanda Haleko, please stand. Samantha Drexler and Tori Calverver. So thank you for entrusting your children with us. So the journey for us as a school begins the moment they enroll and continues through their life after graduation. In between, we strive to fully integrate them into meaningful academic programs infused with the social and emotional support essential for these students who are immigrants. As you can see, ELs are not a homogeneous group. They span the spectrum of English language proficiency and academic backgrounds. Our program currently has students who represent approximately 14 different languages and include all 5 levels of proficiency as identified by New York State. ENL is an educational discipline still in its relatively early stages. Just as special education programs have grown and evolved over the years, finding the methodologies that truly integrate all children, ENL is finding its footing as we learn more about the unique needs of this population. When New York State issued its mandate to change the way we approach educating ELs, school districts were asked to develop their own pathways for equity for ELs. We had to build systems, protocols, programs, and supports, and we have been innovative in meeting the needs of ELs. We have been reflective in our approach and practice, and are evolving as our population changes and continues to grow. The ENL model supports integrated and standalone classes. Our ENL teachers integrate into academic courses, ensuring ELs have equitable access to the curriculum while simultaneously receiving targeted language support. In the standalone class, the teachers design a curriculum that supports the development of English language proficiency, academic achievement, and cultural awareness. Teachers help students acclimate to the challenges of being a student in our school. What makes us us? As an ENL team, we encounter challenges every day because there are so many unique situations, and we innovate to create solutions. Building upon the integration model to meet the needs of our students, unique educational pathways for ELs were created. Our ELs have interrupted or limited schooling, maybe at grade level, or are advanced in some content areas. Our courses and programs are tailored to meet their needs, ensuring that our ELs are being given opportunities and access to an education. We engage them in authentic experiences. We created the Garden Project, where the students had to use their math knowledge to design the garden beds, science knowledge to understand the needs of plants. We also had the Pulsera Project, where the students were applying their language skills in a real-world environment. They had to explain the purpose of the organization and engage in dialogue with their peers. In addition to academic support, we also provide bilingual counselors to support their social and emotional needs as well. Protocols were created to enable efficient communication of information. The Multilingual Learner Educational Plan, MEP, is an innovative tool provided to teachers similar to an IEP. It shares information about the students and recommended strategies and approaches that would support the student. In September of 2022, we introduced the document at the secondary level and received positive feedback from teachers. This year, we expanded the implementation of the MEPs across the entire district, ensuring that a plan was created for all ELs K-12. We are also very proud to share that the MEP is soon to be published as part of an ENL resource book. We audit our systems for gaps in service and support for ELs. We collaborate with special education department to successfully identify and support ELs with learning disabilities. We have fostered a strong school-to-home connection by building relationships with families through school and community events, being sensitive and aware of differing cultural perspectives, using translation and interpretation platforms for communication. And we designed and implemented an internal professional development initiative for teachers and administrators that is tailored to the specific needs of our students and staff. Educating ELs is a shared responsibility, and creating equity requires the thoughtful participation of all. This is the reason why over the past few years we have worked on creating opportunities to inform, train, and collaborate with North Shore teachers and administrators. We are so fortunate here to have a talented group of ENL teachers on our team. Leading the way in professional learning at the secondary level is Amanda Haleko, who is here tonight. She has created and delivered these opportunities and provides endless support to every person that comes into contact with our ELs. We have targeted various levels within our school system to inform and to hone in on the specific needs of our educators. As you can see on the slide, we have presented and workshopped at the district, building, and department levels. Our ELs, whose pathway is graduation, meet this challenge with success and pride. They feel empowered with the skills necessary to pursue their passions and thrive in a global society. Our next steps as we continue our work towards equity to foster differentiation for ELs to ensure equity for students and families. to improve access for students and parents to information and presentations offered by the district and schools, to continue professional development, to train staff to be inclusive of ELs and their families, to continue to improve the identification of ELs with learning disabilities, and dedicate time to writing curriculum for integrated secondary courses and standalone ENL. I would like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Zublionis, Dr. Smythe, Mr. Pappas, for your continuous guidance and support of these programs that make a lifelong impact on our students. And now I would like to welcome back my colleague Julie to speak about English language arts.
Hello again. I'm going to start the second part of our presentation with the elementary band. Debates about the best way to teach reading have occurred for over 100 years, but recent events have caused them to resurface. Discussed in our professional organizations and publicized through media coverage, some dismal national literacy outcomes have educators riveted. We're determined to learn more and to change. Though alarming, it's important to remember that the statistics cited in the news and on podcasts are national or state statistics. They're not North Shore statistics. As I noted on my first slide, North Shore students are doing comparatively well. And yet, we're not content to just merely retain the status quo. Our current program has served us well, but we at North Shore are committed to continuous improvement to meet the ever-advancing field of education. Our solution, therefore, is to review and adjust our practices and align them more closely with the science of reading. We've all heard the term science of reading, but to make sure everyone's on the same page, I'd like to establish the definition as accepted by the experts. According to the Reading League, the science of reading is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. This research has been conducted over the last 5 decades across the world and is derived from thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages. The science of reading has culminated in a preponderance of evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop, why some have difficulty, and how we can most effectively assess and teach and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention of and intervention for reading difficulties. That vast body of scientifically based evidence is derived from researchers across multiple fields, including cognitive psychology, communication sciences, linguistics, neuroscience, and many others. Unfortunately, there are a lot of misconceptions about the science of reading, so let's talk a little bit about what it isn't. It isn't an ideology or a philosophy. It's not a fad, a trend, a new idea, or a pendulum swing. It's not a political agenda, a one-size-fits-all approach, a program of instruction, or a single specific component of instruction, such as phonics or using only decodables. The science of reading also is not a repudiation of all of balanced literacy, such as read-alouds and other joyful, empathy-building, life-enriching reading experiences. So, what does the research say? Obviously, it's impossible to provide a summary given the magnitude of topics, studies, and findings, but this graphic provides a brief introduction to the breadth and complexities of the field. This is Scarborough's reading rope, a conceptual model developed to illustrate the components that go into skilled reading. The reading rope consists of lower and upper strands. The bottom strands are the word recognition strands. They include phonological awareness, which relates to oral language, decoding, including the alphabetic principle and sound spelling correspondences, and sight recognition, which occurs through orthographic mapping. According to Scarborough, these strands become increasingly automatic over time, typically in early elementary school, and usually are in place by the end of 2nd or 3rd grade. Concurrently, the language comprehension strands, the top strands, are activated. They include background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures such as syntax and semantics, verbal reasoning, literacy knowledge, including print concepts and genres. These upper strands, Scarborough explains, becomes increasingly strategic over time. All of this happens simultaneously, and it's that weaving together of the word recognition strands with the language comprehension strands that produces skilled reading. This doesn't happen overnight. It requires explicit instruction and practice over time. Needless to say, Scarborough's reading rope illustrates quite clearly that, as author Dr. Louisa Mott says, teaching reading is rocket science. So what are we doing at North Shore to align more closely with the science of reading? Our approach is two-pronged. We are deepening our understanding of the science of reading while engaging in a comprehensive review and revision of our literacy program. First, here is how we're actively working on knowledge building. As I mentioned, the science of reading is a vast and rigorous collection of thousands of studies. It can't be processed with a one-and-done approach. Teachers need repeated and ongoing PD to deepen and reinforce their understanding, so we're working diligently on that. Last winter, Dr. Smythe, Ms. Small, and I led the Reading Instruction Study Group, a 40-person group of K-12 teachers and administrators focusing on the science of reading. We spent the year analyzing primary sources, scholarly meta-analyses, and book excerpts from the leading voices in the field. This year, we're continuing our extensive content-driven in-house and expert PD and have enrolled staff members in letters training. And here's how we're reviewing and revising our literacy program. The most important thing to note is that we're not jumping to conclusions or applying quick fix band-aids to complex problems. Instead, we're using a well-considered, methodical approach that examines the broad system-wide influences on literacy. In addition, we're committed to maintaining stability for our students and teachers while the new infrastructures are being planned and built, honoring and supporting our teachers' differentiated shifts. Finally, we've created a district literacy team and enrolled in letters for administrators to guide the evaluation, planning, and execution of short and long-term actions. What is LETTERS? LETTERS stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. Letters for Teachers is a 2-year, program-agnostic, graduate-level, professional development course that's the foundation that drives our learning. All of our elementary reading teachers, our 2 literacy coaches, and all related elementary administrators are learning about each of the subtopics of each of the systems of each of the strands of Scarborough's reading rope. I know I speak for all of us who are completing the course when I say that LETTERS is comprehensive, rigorous, and inspiring. The 16-member district literacy team is conducting a monumental task. We have to evaluate our current literacy program, prioritize all of the various components within a 3 to 5 year timeline, design all the elements, processes, and procedures of a new comprehensive literacy program, and implement, monitor, and refine all the short and long-term actions associated with making these changes. And we're engaging in all of those tasks for all of the programmatic literacy components, including universal instruction practices, materials, and resources, new curriculum, all assessments, including screeners, diagnostics, and progress monitoring tools, data collection, warehousing, and analysis, and intervention practices, policies, and schedules. As you can see, this is quite an undertaking. However, the journey to revise our school's literacy program has been undeniably fascinating and inspiring. As we stand at the very beginning of this initiative, we're not just ready, we're eager to embrace the challenge. Now let's take a look at the middle school. One major challenge that our students face is the transition from elementary school to middle school. For incoming 6th graders, middle school arrives with greater academic and behavioral expectations. Students have multiple teachers, they switch classrooms for different subjects, and they need to navigate different Google Classrooms to keep track of their assignments, deadlines, and materials. In addition, academic rigor increases in middle school, and students are introduced to more complex skills and content. These shifts can be overwhelming for some students, and many struggle to meet them. Our solution, our new English 6 Extension course. English 6 Extension's small class size accommodates personalized learning. Our goal is to ease the academic and behavioral expectations of middle school through a student-centered journey that builds confidence, student self-efficacy, and joyful learning. The instruction leverages project-based learning, metacognition, and student-led conferences to empower our students. Our curriculum focuses on ELA skills, the SVOs, and study skills. The English 6 Extension teachers opened the year with their first unit, How to Do School, the North Shore version. The unit was launched with a diagnostic survey asking the students to consider 6 aspects of middle school scholarship: time management, note-taking, active reading strategies, studying and homework, organizational skills, including locker management, and reflective practice. Here are 2 students speaking about their journey. After mentoring the students through instruction and application of each of those skills, the teachers culminated the unit with a student-led conference. The 6th graders' task was to reflect upon their study skill journey, curate a collection of artifacts to represent their growth, celebrate the successes they achieved, and plan their next steps for improvement. Here is an actual student-led conference. Our English 6 Extension is on its way to providing a smoother transition to the behavioral and expectations of elementary school to those of middle school. And now on to the high school. Providing academic support to juniors can be challenging for many reasons, including the students' schedules, their need for differentiation, and even their engagement with the support we offer. To solve this, I have designed a multi-tiered approach to English language arts academic intervention services. While our 11th grade AIS does contain some practical matters related to the format of the Regents exam, we focus on transfer, active in reading and writing strategies that can be applied to a variety of authentic experiences. Augmenting students' reading and writing practice aligns with Scarborough Reading Rope upper strands. More time reading increases students' background knowledge and vocabulary, serving their comprehension of texts they will encounter throughout their lives. However, tests are a reality in many educational systems and can have significant consequences for students. Teaching test-taking strategies is a pragmatic approach to help students navigate these assessments successfully. Earlier, I showed you that 100% of our special education students pass the English Regents. This is in part due to our multi-tiered approach to 11th grade academic intervention services. Through teacher recommendations and a universal screener, we identify approximately 10% of our juniors to sit for an additional administration of the Regents in January. This diminishes the stress that usually accompanies standardized testing and builds the students' confidence when they attempt it again in June. The January Regents also provides these students with a chance to improve their scores, as New York State allows us to use the higher score on their transcripts. It also informs our second semester instruction. The 11th grade AIS students are also invited to enroll in an English support class. In the first sessions, we familiarize them with the format of the test. We empower them to utilize their testing accommodations with metacognitive deliberateness, and we engage them in stamina building and time efficiency exercises. For the remainder of the course, we take a genre-based approach to the Regents' content. To give students the tools they need when encountering unfamiliar texts, we developed acronyms for different literary genres. This helps students enter into a text with something concrete to begin their analysis. With fiction, we coach our students to start with SCC, setting, character, and conflict. With verse, we use Swift, speaker and setting, happenings, word choice, imagery, figurative language, tone, and title. And with nonfiction, the students annotate for PACT, purpose, audience, central idea, and text structure. Armed with these acronyms, students will be better prepared to engage in the close reading of increasingly complex texts. More importantly, they will be able to transfer this strategy to different contexts and circumstances in their academic and professional lives and in their personal lives as they critically evaluate current events and information they encounter on their social media feeds. Finally, I'd like to thank the Board of Ed for your continued support of our K-12 English Language Arts Department. Our teachers and I are passionately committed to continued improvement to meet all of our students' literacy needs. With strong reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills, our students will be better able to celebrate the human experience, share their ideas and emotions, comprehend and construct meaning, be thoughtful receivers and purveyors of text, and commit to a joyful growth in themselves and an empathetic concern for others. Though ambitious, these lofty goals are our consistent and invaluable objectives. And now I'd like to invite Seth back for social studies.
Thank you, Julie. With the social studies program today, I would like to highlight some of the challenges and solutions that we're working on in the social studies program. The first one that I'm going to highlight here is the new exams. The new exams in global as well as in US history had very few resources for teachers and for school districts and had very few released questions, which made trying to learn about those tests a bit of a mystery and had a lot of questions for it. Because of this and realizing that we probably weren't going to get more, we tried to take a proactive approach, making our own resources, making our own questions, and working with a social studies consultant who had worked on AP and Regents exams in the past that could help us plan for the future and predict what some of these tests may come up with. Just to kind of fully highlight there, just a little bit more specifically, New York State did not release a full version of the US history exam. So in June, even though there was a brand new exam, they had only released about 8 practice questions for multiple choice, even though they had an exam from the year prior. Even with the global exam, besides the actual Regents exam, few resources were provided to teachers. Another challenge that we looked at is that the conversion rates on these new exams are incredibly difficult. I'll highlight that a little bit more, but it's much more difficult than it was in the past to achieve mastery and scores of 90 or 95, which were typical on social studies Regents exams. One of the things that we created that I'm showing here is just kind of a toolbox of resources, and this isn't particularly valuable, and it was initially too for teachers of Regents courses as they're trying to familiarize themselves with these new exams. What we did is we collected in our PD with myself and Greg Alquist, we tried to collect all the resources that did exist and organize them in a common place. We also worked after doing the PD sessions, which we would hold early in the summer. We would have curriculum writing time for teachers to process and try to make revisions to the curriculum. Teachers created their own test banks where they took old questions but tried to make the new task models. So under the professional guidance, they were able to kind of create their own versions of it and share it with each other. Another example of a toolbox item here, I'm just showing up on the board, is we had a brand new essay type in the global exam, which is enduring issues essays. One of the tools that we created for teachers was like, how can kids identify a enduring issue. So we came up with different categories that often we could predict that might come up. And I had seen teachers notice, well, conflict comes up in a lot of them. We're going to focus our first enduring issue essay on conflict and things that we think are going to be there, but also show students other ways to approach it. Another example of a toolbox item here is just easy templates. If you want to create a practice set of short answer questions for the global or for the US, we made templates ready so you can insert your documents, the questions which are consistent, we would have them there for teachers available to use so they can make their own resources and share them with each other, allow it to be a resource that could be shared and make it more easy to get more practice and even do shorter versions of it at times. You can see here, and I've also, hopefully it is a bit small, but I will try to highlight it here for you as well. These are the conversion rates. A conversion rate is, it takes how many multiple choice questions the kids get and their score on the essay, and then it finds a spot on the chart of what they're performing. One of the things you'll notice is that on the left side of there's two charts here. On the left side, you can see the old Regents exams. So for example, this shows 90, how many boxes were possible combinations for a 90, and then on the right side, a 95. So in 2019, for example, on the global exam, there were 87 possible combinations where students could earn a 90 or higher. Well, on the 2023 June Regents, there were 19. And you'll notice on the 95 or higher, there were 43 in 2019 possible chances for students to score 95 or higher. In the June Regents in the US history, there were 5. So it's much more challenging for students because every question you miss makes it more and more challenging. There's less flexibility. And one of the reasons is they went from 50 multiple choice down to 28. So each question creates a greater cost to anything individually wrong. I had parents that would say, well, my student felt like he did really well on it, but he didn't score well. And I would look, well, they only missed 1 or 2 questions. They did really well. And in the past, that may have been a 96 or 97, but now it's not. So this is one of the challenges for us. We as state, as social studies leaders across Long Island have been petitioning the state for changes to the conversion rate, and we're working for that to try to find ways that we can better help the success of students here and across New York State. You'll see it's the same pattern in US history. We go from 90 or higher on the US exam, which used to be noted as an easier exam because you needed 1 of the 2 to graduate, 105 possible combinations for a 90 or higher in 2019. This year, we're only 27 combinations. In the 95 or higher, there used to be 63 possible combinations where you could score a 95 or higher. This past year, there were 8. And I'll just give a comparison. In 2019, there were 15 different ways you could score a 99 or higher in the old exam, where this year, there were 0. So it's just a kind of a showing how much more challenging it is for students on these new exams to perform well. Another thing that I wanted to highlight is, there's always a concern of, are we teaching to the test? And I think our approach as a social studies and a discipline is teach for success on the test and beyond. And I'll highlight a few things that we do here. One is test success is only one of the things that we value in our discipline. We value civil discourse. We look at the standards, students engaged in research, social emotional learning, student inquiry, and civic action. Our plan for PD shows a little bit of a glimpse of that, and I've been implementing this work with Greg Alquist since 2018 or 19, and I've had him here, I think, 4 or 5 summers so far. What I'm highlighting here is that what we did day 1, we did an autopsy of the new exams because this is the first time we did the new US history region. We wanted to look at the global because we wanted to increase mastery rates, but also at the same time, we wanted to have it not only success on the test, but what can we learn about our vertical program? What can we do to support students throughout this journey? So day 2, we looked at vertical process as the K-12 system. As I became a K-12 director, I involved elementary teachers in this so they could see the new exams and what they could do, the elementary levels to support students. We also looked at a variety of different, kind of practice resources, activities. We noticed the importance of reading and vocabulary and how we could do that in instruction. So these are some of the things we focused on. As you can see on here, this is an example of some of the feedback the teachers gave that attended these days, and it was very well received over these past few years, and teachers would come away with a variety of different insights into this. They would notice how, the importance of reading being an essential part, and how do we look at that in our practice. We would also look at things like context is super important for these new tests. Some teachers were saying now they have a better sense of how these questions were created and the thought behind these new exams. So these were all some of the different takeaways that not only inform teachers, but also inform us to continue our work with teachers and our program goals for social studies. I want to highlight a new thing I shared with teachers this summer, and I began sharing at different parts, especially the elementary teachers have already started using this. Greg Ahlquist to create a boxing protocol. I have a version of it I call the mystery source. And I'm just going to give you a quick sample of what this looks like, because the question might be, what does inquiry-based learning look like in social studies? It's a buzzword. So a mystery source is something that leaves off some information and asks kids to ask questions. So I'm going to give you a sample one here. Take a look at this statistical chart. On the left side, you see a variety of years. On the right side, you see a population estimate. And then you see at the bottom the source and the year. So we would ask students, what do you think this might show? And have them maybe turn and talk with a partner, ask questions, what would they want to know more about? I'll reveal the mystery to you guys for this particular one. This is actually the population of buffalo as it occurred in the continental United States. So now this might spark, oh geez, what happened to buffalo during these years? What had this great increase? Well, that's how we frame our inquiry question. This would be a question that launches an investigation into what happened. So a way to guide our learning might be, what happened to the American buffalo in the 1800s and how did this impact Native Americans? So this inquiry question might guide the look into this particular topic. We then would integrate a variety of sources. This you can see here is similar to a Regents task, where it's a primary source letter from Harper's Weekly, where it looks at something that like the trains, the impact that the railroads would have, and how the passengers were often given guns to shoot buffalo as they were riding by on the trains. So we're trying to use some of these passages, but in a way that's more about the inquiry than it is just about the skill of reading. To take this to the next level, we would look at, well, let's have a discussion upon these things. So I'm going to give you an example of one you might do. You could see the pile of skulls on the left side, and then you would also, students would be noticing the dates. Oh, that's 1892. That's right when there was a major drop-off. So students would start to piece together information as they learn through more and more of the sources. And we might ask them to use an iceberg as a thing. What's at the tip of the iceberg? What did you see as we were going through this lesson and looking at a variety of sources? What are some of the things that are below the surface, right? What are some of the factors that influence what happened? And let's get deeper down. As we go deeper, what were some of the root causes and lasting impacts of what happened? And then reflection, what should we learn from this? This organizer might be something to jot, but also could be used then as a discussion tool for students to process their original source and what they happen as they learn throughout the lesson. Not only gaining the skills and the knowledge, but doing so in a way where they're engaged through an inquiry-based process. Another challenge within our department we've looked at has been the rise of a variety of different things. This to talk about would be anti-Semitism, prejudice towards different groups based on race, sex, gender, religion, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, and others. And what can we do as a school community and a humanities department to work with students? So one of the things that we're going to highlight today, and this is beginning part of our work we've been doing, is our work on civil discourse, as we think that's an important part or piece of this. And also the other one that we've started is civic participation. How can we get students interested in about issues that impact them, and how can they take action towards that? Civil discourse is something that is a powerful part of it. And then I'm going to use this one quote. However much we are affected by the things of the world, however deeply they may stir and stimulate us, they become human for us only when we can discuss them with our fellows. So this idea as being able to discuss things. And some of the questions of civil discourse that often come up, and I'll give you one example, is while we may be able to share our views easily with those who agree with us, how do we express our opinion while leaving room for someone else's viewpoint? So looking at how can we do that in a political environment that often is challenging for students. I'm going to skip ahead to show you a little bit of our work. One of the things we did is a co-construction with teachers on what we call our conversation guidelines. And our conversation guidelines was with teachers, we looked at a variety of different resources. And we created these together collaboratively, and we refined them over time. These would be things like support your assertions with reliable evidence, show respect and suspend judgment, speak your truth, noting common ground as well as differences. We might ask students to identify which of these particular goals are they working towards, or teachers may identify one for them that this is what we're going to guide our work with today. We're going to be looking for your assertions to be reliable evidence, and teachers would often continually ask for that in the course of instruction to ensure that students are doing that as a way to engage students and also to get them there. And part of this is I'm going to go back to a quote from Teresa Grand, which says, what if, she talks this idea that we often see conversations on emotional topics or things that spark controversy between students and label them difficult. But what if these conversations aren't actually difficult, but they're simply unpracticed? And that's part of what our work and our work going forward wants to be about, is how can we get teachers and students to practice these things so they can better have discussions with their peers in their communities and be able to have differences of opinions, but do so in a place where I might show respect and suspend judgment of others' ideas. Another effort that I want to talk about that looks at how can we work together is we have capstone projects in our senior courses that is part of our Seal of Civic Readiness. This is an example from last year from the AP Government one, where students would research an issue. They would look at what happened behind this, what were the reasons for this, and ultimately their capstone was about taking action. What could they do to change this issue in their community? And we wanted this to be about student choice, where they would choose something that was deeply passionate to them, and that they could work with partners of their choice and ultimately figure out what they might be able to do. We were proud to report of our first year, while we've continuing to work to revise this, as Mr. Perlis can greatly know, right? The challenges of getting seniors in the end of their years to really kind of commit to this capstone is challenging work. But in our first year, we had 174 recipients, and we were a pilot school. Not all New York State schools have done that or even enrolled at this point because of the work it takes in the system and the commitment and dedication from our teachers. So we're very proud of it, and while we continue to work to improve this, we are on our ways to really try to develop a successful program in this regard. As our last part here, just give me a quick second to shift my papers around. Apologies. The final part of our humanities presentation is about our next steps. And I will speak on behalf of Julie and Anna here. One is to continue the comprehensive review and revision of our literacy program guided by the science of reading. Implementing conversation guidelines and promoting civil discourse in our humanities program, elevate and refine the digital portfolio process in world languages, and continue the work towards equity for our ELs. I would like to thank the Board of Education, Central Office, parents, students, and our whole community for our opportunity to share and highlight our programs for you tonight, and thank you so much.
That was a very comprehensive presentation. Thank you to Carol and our directors and our students. Are the students leaving yet? Oh no, I just wanted to ask, first of all, thank you so much for coming. Yeah, gracias. I could never speak a second language. Can I don't know if you can translate, Anna. We make a lot of decisions up here. And I want to know from both of you if there's anything that you need or that you think your program needs so that you're happier and that you feel better prepared at school. I love that. I love that. I love that. I also want to ask their teachers the same thing. And so I want specifics. I want to give both of you ask you both the same question if you have an answer. Right, excellent. And so I look forward to your email. Thank you, guys. I'd like to open it up. Thank you, girls.
Thank you.
I'd like to open it up to the trustees. Rich?
First of all, thank you very much for that really very comprehensive report. I really appreciate the amount of work that went into doing that, so thank you for that. I have a mechanical question about the digital portfolios because I understand at the elementary level, it's the students are guided through what's happening. But my understanding was at the secondary level, it's a little bit more open-ended. So is there, do the students get guidelines in terms of the expectations for what's supposed to go in a particular year? And do they have the option of submitting something and then after the fact deciding that they'd rather replace that with another piece of work?
So, like I said, this is the first year we rolled out the portfolios, especially with Google Sites. So that alone was a learning curve on how to create that. So we are literally making decisions as we encounter them with the students. What the students will do is they can upload evidence that they just feel they want in the folder with an individual reflection. And then our goal is 2 points in January and in June. So for this year, it actually will be in June because we had a late start. The students will select some of those pieces of evidence and really speak. We develop reflection questions to speak about those 2 or 3. So it almost becomes a repository of their work, and at any time they can, add things or remove things. We also talked about it doesn't have to be their best work. It could be something that reflects, if it's not their best work, why isn't it? What did they learn from that? So it's not about always the best that goes in there. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Can I give in terms of the presentation with English, I know we were told that a relatively small population of students, I guess students who are getting AIS services, are encouraged to take the Regents exam in January, almost as a dry run, and then they can take it again in June. Is there a downside to doing that for everybody?
Yeah, because developmentally they will have gone through a whole other half a year of school. So it really, the grades really do improve in June. So it's not intended to just transfer everybody over. It really is for the students who need that confidence building, who just sit through it once and see what it feels like. And most importantly, to inform our second semester instruction. So we sit through and we deconstruct those graded essays, graded Regents exams, and then we know exactly what to target in our instruction going forward. Sure.
Thank you so much, guys. Every time we have one of these, I'm overwhelmed by gratitude. This is so informative. Giving us the lens into what you do and how you do it is, it truly, it's priceless. So thank you very much. I'm going to work backwards. If I may ask, Mr. Gordon, you had the 174 sounds incredibly impressive. That is out of what class size?
It was just under 200, I believe.
So it's wildly impressive for the first year. Thank you. I want to ask what might sound like a challenging question, and I don't mean it that way, but why is it, if I understood you correctly, it feels problematic, and I want to know, why does it feel problematic that it is more difficult to achieve mastery on this is on the social studies Regents in particular that you were talking about, than it used to be? Why is that problematic?
I think it's more problematic because a lot of times we have half our students in many cases are taking AP and IB courses, and they would do well on those. And I had last year where I had students who were getting 5s on APs and then an 85 on the Regents, where it just didn't make sense that kids were doing things at such a high AP level, but not on the Regents. So it just questioned the validity to me of the Regents exam, that you could have a student basically earning the highest marks on an AP exam, but then in the mid 80s or somewhere around there on the actual exam. And a lot of times it's like, there are questions on there. I'll give you, I think I highlighted it in my, my report, but only 50% of students in Long Island were getting it correct. So to me, if you have a question where only 50% of students are getting it correct, it's not a valid question. But remember, you only have 28 of those. So you now have half the kids that are automatically getting that wrong. So then for those kids that are looking for mastery or looking for 90s or higher, there's questions on there that are just not great questions. And you used to kind of have them get mopped up when you had 50 of them. Now, when you have 28, there's a high degree of importance on a singular question. And sometimes the questions are very specific and like, they just don't feel like good questions. Like there was a whole question on Frederick Turner's frontier thesis, which I'm sure our US history class teachers are not spending a significant amount of time on, right? So you can pick anything in the framework because it's within those years, but you could really pick something very specific. And in that question, rather than like what they could have made it seem very easy, they called, the answer was something about unsettled frontier wilderness. And like kids just didn't know what that meant. You know, like they're saying like that was what's changing America. And so it was like, even if kids knew that, like you weren't going to have your average reader, your Regents level course student really even know what the question was about. So for that reason, that now that you're missing those questions, and if it just makes it very difficult for students to get the same level of, you know, what they're really capable of achieving. So that's, to me, is part of problematic, is it's not always representing what students really know and learn. This is how this question, you know, maybe they were eliminated down to these two, but then they were picking. So it's a guessing element. So that part is problematic to me. Does that does that clarify that?
Very much so.
Thank you.
That helps a lot. I guess my next question related to that, and I won't belabor this because I know it's many hours long conversation, but so this is a relatively new thing that you have to deal with now. What do you envision, you touched just a tiny bit on how you'll go about trying to address this situation. How can you just elaborate a little bit more on that and
Sure.
where you want to
I met with social studies leaders this summer and I cut out the conversion charts into chunks, and that's what you saw there. And a lot of them didn't realize how bad it was. That you'd have 15 99s and none on the new exam, right? Like things that were just what I think they were concerned about the passing and the mastery rates. But to me, it's looking at there's so many more levels of 0 to 64 than there used to be. There's almost no spots where students on the real high end can show what they've learned. So I think part of it is kind of really capturing, educating our own, leaders on Long Island and across the state. And hopefully we can find ways that the state can either, to me, a simple answer to is just increase the amount of questions. Right? It's not like the multiple choice questions in our administrations are taking that long. It's how long the essays and other things are taking. But by just increasing the amount of questions, you can fix a lot of the things. So I think it's like, either you can fix the conversion charts to make the thing that was interesting to me is the conversion rate was actually more difficult this year than it was the year before. So they actually made passing and mastery easier last year and more difficult this year on the global. We actually did better. So, I'm not complaining about that as much because our students did really well, but I'm sure there's leaders across the state saying we probably our mastery rate just went down because I think there was 14 fewer boxes of mastery, right around the 85. There was they had the highest number on the new chart on the global was actually the 84, which seems, and the next highest one was the 64. So that just seems to be, why would those things exist on the charts? And I attach full versions of the charts on my report. But to me, those things they don't make sense to me. And I don't know why the leaders of the state, but I know whenever I show up to the state meetings, there's no one there to listen to me from those test makers. So that's part of the problem. So there's not an easy answer to it. Our way is to let's just keep getting kids to be better readers, better thinkers, better writers. And we will continue to do better despite some of these challenges, but it's not an easy fix to how poorly designed, I think, the conversion rates and just, I understand making less questions on the test, but it's actually not making it better for kids.
Thank you so much. Just a comment to wrap up. I'm listening to you and I'm contrasting it with the experience our students are having. 3 of us have 8th graders participating in the National History Day project. And, what a phenomenal, authentic learning experience and proof of the learning experience that comes out of it. So there's definitely some incredible things happening despite, what might be difficulties thrown at us by the state. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple for Ms. Ritter and Ms. Aguiar, maybe. I just wanted to ask Ms. Ritter if you could clarify. I didn't quite follow on the English 6 extension class, which is brand new this year. It's the first. Is this actually well, let me just ask you, can you just talk about it in, a 3-minute elevator speech?
Sure. So the program for 6th graders was changed from years prior. In years prior, 6th graders used to have everyday English, and it used to alternate with math and social studies and science. It was changed this year so that students just have 1 period of English every day, but then they have an every other day full block of this English extension course. So I really could design it any way I wanted to, but I was very mindful of actually your guys' request last year of that presentation on transitions. We did design a similar course in 9th grade as a transition to high school. So I thought it was a great opportunity to use study skills and the SVOs as tools to really serve English language arts, and kind of that marriage is building each, that content in both.
Oh, I'm sorry. I still more basically. So you're saying every other day.
Yes.
they're having this English 6 extension, is it the entire period is the extension?
Yes, it's the entire period, and it's a smaller class size. So it's most of the teams are kept together. I think there is one team that is split, but I think there's about a 10 to 15 students in the class.
That's
Yeah, so they can
fantastic.
really personalize their journey.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's really lovely, and the kids are just having so much fun with it. It's not graded, so the kids feel really free to just explore learning for learning's sake without the pressure of grades. And the teachers are really having a fun time with it.
It's year long? It's going.
It's a
the
year-long
entire-
class,
okay.
and the study skills unit is just the beginning unit, and we really transitioned to, they're doing the Humans of New York now, and they're going on to do a passion project, which is an MLA research-based paper.
What a
Thank you.
great skill to
Thank
start
you.
them out with. Could we do a continuing ed thing for adults? Because it sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay. I want to move along because I know I don't want to take too much time. So I'm going to turn my attention to Ms. Aguiar-Mady. I just wanted to ask you, going back to the digital portfolio, do you envision this as something that then the students can, I know you're just starting it out, but they will, as they continue through the years of developing their language proficiency, they ultimately will end up with quite a great accumulation, hopefully, in the digital portfolio. They could then presumably use this in their college applications. Is that sort of already a goal? Is that something you're thinking about?
Yes. So, and that's why we used Google Sites. We transitioned just from exploring options out there. They could have the repository, like I said, in all the different tabs, but that homepage can become truly, if you scroll down, a history of their learning that, yes, can definitely be used in the future for college applications.
I'm wondering if it's something that we're thinking beyond. I mean, at the moment, it's just being used in world languages. Is that correct? So is it something we envision more broadly for building college application?
Carol and I have talked extensively about that. I mean, Anna is really pioneering this work, but to measure the SVOs and growth in the SVOs, there's something we're going to work out with a profile of a learner, graduate. But I do think, especially when you look at where New York State is going with the Blue Ribbon Commission and the change to graduation measures, that those kinds of evidences of learning might be sought out by colleges.
I can imagine. I mean, I would imagine colleges have been talking about it for a while, and it just sounds like like we're really thinking well in terms of that future. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to the teachers to be here too.
So I have a question for Ms. Ritter, and it's actually, I guess, with Carol too, because it goes back to Columbia's Teachers Workshop. So we spent probably millions of dollars on Teachers Workshop, on training, on projects. It was quite expensive, and every year I would torture Rob Gablicki about the cost of the program and when it was going to go down. And we had presentations on it, and I sat with Dr. O'Hara at the time, who was not in this position, but in a different position. And we spent many years and a lot of investment in PD for our teachers. So how are we integrating that with the letters program? Because I don't know how you can just, toss it out the window after all the investment and the training that went into it with the culture. And I did read, that New York City has abandoned Teachers Workshop.
It's such a good question, Marianne. It is the question that really plagues all of us ELA directors. I was just on a call this afternoon with about 6 local directors as well. The one thing that we don't want to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater. There was some great things about TC. The writing is something that we're all struggling with. Like, how do we have such a rich writing program in North Shore, K-12, our kids are writing. They're all different genres and doing great work. Where does that fit into the science of reading? We're not exactly sure yet. And this is a very new journey for us, for me especially. All of us really in English language arts. But I agree with you. We don't want to lose those aspects of the TC that we're working really well. The writing is something that we're always talking about. How do we keep that rich writing program? How do we keep that love of books? We don't want to just read decodables, right? We want to have the kids enjoying stories with read alouds to learn about themselves, their families, their communities, right? How to navigate being human. So I would say we're not going to get rid of those elements. We're going to find a way to make it work. I don't have the answer yet, but I know that it's definitely out there because both strands of the reading rope do talk about that, right? It's not just the language element, it's also the knowledge. So
important because I do realize the deficiencies in teachers workshop, which was the grammar part and more of the structural part, but the creative part and the love of learning and the ability to write and to select literature that speaks to the individual child, because not everyone likes the same book, right? So I'm concerned that we spent all this time fostering this environment and training our teachers, and that somehow now we're going to make it into a phonics program, you know?
So I think a lot of the professional development is transferable. So for example, all of the work around a workshop model and all the benefits that has for kids transcends instruction across the content areas. And like you're saying, there are so many elements that we would never want to lose, like Julie mentioned, in terms of kids having a rich wealth of text to read. But as you mentioned, there are things we know we can shore up. And, you know, as Julie mentioned, looking at that reading rope, particularly on that word recognition strand. So kind of as we go through this journey, thinking about what is the science of reading tell us that we need to implement to fine tune our program, but taking the best of what we've had together. So it's kind of like our next step in the journey.
Yeah, if I could just say, just to piggyback on what Carol's saying, going back to 2012 when we adopted the TC program, and I remember there was a kind of a systemic lack of coherence in both our reading and our writing instruction. And one of the big broad things that TC provided for us was a structure and a system that was coherent. So I do think there was a lot of value that we can now work within that structure that's been built. And it really did help us build a structure. I think along the way, we did our own teachers, our coaches, Julie, Devra, and Carol saw some of those issues, and we have been making adjustments. But we created interdisciplinary units. We did have a great set of PD. I do think some of the writing is strong. TC wrote these learning progressions in 2017 that are truly have really benefited our kids. We've seen that. So I think that not throwing out the baby with the bathwater is such a good way to look at this because there is some value there while we still do have to make some changes.
Following up on some of the vocabulary and the foreign languages. So millions of years ago in this district, we taught Latin in 3rd and 4th grade, no, 4th and 5th grade, right? And then we took it out, and then we ended up putting in a program in the 9th grade to teach our kids what they no longer learned in 4th and 5th grade in Latin, which were the root words, right? And it's foundational for all your Romance languages. It's helpful for science. Is there any thought as we're looking at, I know we're changing the elementary language program, we've changed it this year, about integrating some of that work that was done in Latin in 4th and 5th grade so that our students are getting that root language before they hit high school, because you're talking about science and decoding, right?
They do those Caesar stems, I remember, maybe 6th grade. 6th grade.
6th grade.
Yeah.
If that was one of the ones that replaced it was Caesar stems in 6th grade, and then there was something in 9th grade too that they did.
I know there was a course that Mr. Bongiovanni taught. I just don't remember what the name was because it hasn't run because of hasn't been enrollment. But there was a course that had to do with exactly what you're saying with the words and the. I was trying to see if I remember. I know that there was a course that existed, but it hasn't run in years.
Going back 15 years, was it Word Power? Not Word Power. Was that the name?
I think it was.
Is that?
I think it was Word. Yes, Word.
It was
Very
Word
good.
Power,
That's
but
the
then
word.
Caesar stems
Love that
also
Chris Keller.
came in.
Okay.
after.
Yes.
But is there any thought about putting some of that root language instruction in earlier than 6th grade, especially for kids who struggle with comprehension? It's a toolkit, right?
Do you think, I don't want to speak out of turn here because Julie and Carol are the experts, but that the science of reading and the part of the integration of content area reading into the science of reading, vocabulary plays a much larger role. That was something with TC that, we did struggle with as well. We were bringing in our own supplemental books. I remember especially our 3rd grade teachers. So I don't know if you want to piggyback on that.
Sure. I think what you're referring to is really building up that background knowledge and that vocabulary early on, so kids enter any reading experience with stronger background knowledge, which will aid in their comprehension. So that's really work that we want to target in that second half of the rope that Julie was talking about. But you're right in terms of, understanding the parts of words would only be a stronger benefit.
Last question, then I'll let them move on. Mr. Gordon, so my question to you is the change in the regions that is affecting our students in terms of mastery. I can't believe that that is not having a negative impact on graduation rates in poorer districts, especially districts where English isn't the first language, there isn't support, larger class sizes. So there must be a way that we can harness the dissatisfaction. I'm wondering, what the overall passing rates were they impacted the same way the mastery rates were impacted on a statewide basis, not in our district? And if they were negatively impacted, which they must have been logically, is there a way that we can form a coalition of districts, not just Long Island districts that are worried, because no one is crying in Albany about our mastery rates, right? But if kids are not graduating high school in major cities and poorer districts, you have a real equity issue.
They're revamping it, right?
There's a couple parts to it. One, they've been more lenient with what is like a passing score with the special appeals and other things across the state. So you can get away with below that number if you're a special ed student or you have a special appeal towards that. Also, they don't necessarily, there's other pathways where you can go to graduation if you don't have one of the social studies exams. We noticed in the first administration of both exams, like the US, we had 100% passing rate. We don't know that that will continue in year 2. I think it'll be harder because I saw the global get harder. But like the first crop of kids are not going to be impacted by graduation rates because last year the globals rate was really easy. The US was very easy this year. So I think one of the things that they're doing is the passing rate was relatively easy on the first administration of it. I don't know that means they're tweaking the questions, they're tweaking the design of it. But it's also a cut score that's moving. Like we took all the US history exams on June 1st. We didn't know what would be the cut scores for anything until like June 23rd. So they're taking the numbers and they're doing something with it because they have all these exams and before they release it, so we know what kids actually scored, it's like 3 weeks later. So there's a set of looking at this information and wondering, and I just don't have all the data from my peers. Like we haven't got really comparison data. When I've gone to these informal meetings, I can say the Long Island districts are most concerned about the mastery, and they're concerned about some of their, as you mentioned, the populations that are, how do we increase equity and decrease gaps, that those numbers are very tough. It's very tough for those students to pass because the reading levels on these exams, and I put up an example because I remember last year I showed you the reading levels in the global. The US one was scoring in the college graduate level on some of the texts as well. So they're not giving, and I think I included an example which it might be good to take a look at. The first exam question on the last old regents was like, what was the Southern Colonies key geographic feature? And then the one this year, you had to read something about like the supremacy or the elastic clause and answer a very challenging question. So it's like I can't even compare the data between the exams, and it's just the challenge for these kids entering into it. Everything is a text-based thing, even the essays. So there is that. I do think there'll be more movement from people in Long Island and across the state, because when I saw Long Island's numbers not good, I'm like, it's not going to be good. Long Island is a very strong region in other areas, but I think people are still at a point where they're just implementing it. They're not sure if they're not doing it well. They're not sure if the state's not doing it well. I'm convinced the state's not doing it well, so that's been my position for it, and I think they need to improve in how they're doing these tests. But there's still this, there needs to be more of a groundswell, and it's just so new that people are still trying to figure out what is going on there. But because people didn't even know when I met with people that our AP students weren't doing well. And they're like that, and people hadn't even compared that numbers, so it's just a newer avenue for us to look at.
Can I ask a follow-up? The part I don't get is it's like two movements. You have regents becoming more difficult to pass, and then you have the state revamping the graduation requirements and creating multiple pathways where we're de-emphasizing regents. And I don't know if you have the answer, but or anyone has the answer, but I can't reconcile those two very opposing movements.
It's weird because you would think, I'll give you a small example that maybe is just a microcosm, but the people who created the global exam didn't work with the people who created the US exam. So they weren't aligning the exams. So when I went and talked to the person, Dan King was one of the heads of creating the global exam, and we were trying to ask questions about the US exam because the person wasn't there, and he said blatantly to us, I had no part in this. And we said, was there collaboration between the two exams? And he said, no, there wasn't. It was a separate group of teachers and members that worked on the exam. So they weren't working together. So unfortunately, you have different people with different goals that aren't necessarily aligned under the same umbrella. I mean, I wonder if that's happening in other places, because I know when I was trying to figure out the global in the US, it's the same thing. We're creating new regions, but at the other, there's a whole other group that's getting rid of regions, right? So it's like it's an interesting dichotomy of like what's happening on the state level.
So it's like test construction's a whole science, right? It's a whole art. Every question that you ask, right? The number of questions affect the validity and the reliability. And it sounds like the state is using teachers to create these exams rather than having publishing, like test publishers create them.
It's common for the global in the US. Yes, it's common for that.
Thank you.
But they don't decide like how many questions there are, right? So that's the different part, is like making a good test question versus like the point distribution in that of the tests.
Getting late. I'll be brief. I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you put into these presentations. The backup that you provided to us was so comprehensive. Once again, just like last year. I mean, the information is really amazing, and it makes me so proud to be part of this district. And I'm jealous of these kids because I wish I were going to school now. I will say, I think it boggles my mind, Seth, that we talked about this last year. And I remember you gave us samples last year of questions that were like over college level, like, master's level reading levels. And again, you gave us examples again. And I enjoyed looking at the tests and the questions, and it's so developmentally inappropriate. And I just, it boggles my mind that they're going in the wrong direction instead of, I'm glad that our kids are are doing well, and that says a great deal about our teachers and our curriculum. And I was going to ask you what the state's rationale is, but it sounds like they don't even show up to your meetings, or, you know. Because, I mean, to go from having so many pathways to get these higher grades to so few, I feel like there should be some reason, some rationale. They should be justifying it somehow. And I just want to piggyback on what Trustee Moscas was saying about the English extension, because you not only did you listen to our feedback from last year for these presentations, but you listened to our feedback about the transitions presentation. And you know, my son just started 6th grade this year, and I remember multiple people coming up to me and saying, you know, it's really hard when they start 6th grade. They have no idea how to study. They don't know how to, you know, even take a test, really, because it's so different in elementary school. And when my son came home after this English extension class and told me about what they were doing, I couldn't believe how great it was. I mean, just to teach these kids how to take notes. They didn't know how to take notes, and now they're learning all of this. And I just think, and there's also a math extension, just, you know, they flip days. So it's English one day, math the next day. And to have those small classes is just so beneficial. And I was just wondering, I know it would just be anecdotal at this point, but I'm just wondering about the effect on our special education children. Like, are you seeing any, you know, positive feedback from special education students with IEPs from those extension classes? I don't know if you have that data yet. Okay. Yeah. I was just curious, if they're seeing, you know, any results from that. Thank you. And I mean, the only other thing I want to say regarding ELL, and just, first of all, I love seeing the students. It's, you know, it really makes it all worthwhile. And I just thought of my mother, who, my grandparents are Holocaust survivors. My mom was born in a DP camp in Germany, and, you know, soon after moved to Israel, came here when she was 11, didn't speak a word of English, and was, you know, thrown into an elementary school in Brooklyn. And she still to this day says, yeah, she didn't have any help. It was just like, you know, you learn English. I remember she said they gave her a test in English to place her in a class, but she didn't speak any English. So, you know, I think if she had these types of supports, you know, I mean, she did end up going to college and graduating, but still, what could she have accomplished? You know, what more could she have accomplished? It's amazing to see what you're doing. So thank you.
David?
Thank you. Terrific presentation. I'm always appreciative of the intentionality with which you carry on your work, the emphasis on continuous improvement, the focus on equity, which has always been a priority of this board that I see you prioritizing. My question is away from testing and some of the other things, and it's pretty straightforward. I'd just like you to tell us a little bit about how you leverage the fact that we live within, you know, 20 miles of the most dynamic city on the planet, and how that creates opportunities for our students in these areas, K through 12, and how we leverage that.
So Josh Knight and Michael Kleba are both teaching AP Lit this year, and last week actually they took their classes to MoMA, and they were looking at the different works and doing like a analysis of the art, kind of like to coincide with like a literary analysis. So we're doing a lot of trips. I think that was actually Carolyn Chris's, one of their kind of like initiatives was having us have these more field trip experiences. And the teachers, I think, are definitely taking advantage of that.
The younger students as well? Maybe not to MoMA per se, but maybe to MoMA. I mean,
what other students besides the AP Lit kit? I'm sorry.
At the younger grades, we're, you know, thinking about how we leverage that at the early ages to give those kids experiences. I remember, you know, the first time I went to Guggenheim and I was like, what is going on here? And then going back year after year with my family and just understanding what that meant. You don't have to necessarily, I mean, my kids are older, so they've been through these experiences and they certainly appreciate them. Mr. Kleba, like putting them in this, into the city and here's point A, here's point B. You'll get there. But even those younger kids, how we can introduce them to those cultural opportunities. And cultural meaning the arts, but also cultural, especially in the languages, for all the different neighborhoods we have between here and Manhattan.
Yeah, it's such a good point because I think we take it for granted that all the families are exposing their children to what I guess probably we do, but it's not always the case. And I think that really does speak to equity. So that's a really great point.
Can I say that, this is personal, but my son did take Mandarin last year in 5th grade, and we all went to Flushing and had dim sum in a restaurant and walked around and did a scavenger hunt. And it was, it was a great experience.
We've done that with my son, and he can read the signs. There was they have the kiosk where they're selling things, and he's like, "Oh, that was 3 for 1." He was able to get that at a young age. But I'd love to hear more about that, and also reinforce that has been a priority of this board. And I appreciate hearing that Carol and Chris and teachers, and the classes have picked that up. And the only other thing I'll add, I don't want Chris, I don't know if you wanted to say anything, but I just wanted to also say, as much as I appreciate the work here of our administrators, I think it's probably worth mentioning also, of course, as we all know, the work of the teachers to carry this out and how effective that is and how important that is and how superlative they are in this district. So I wanted to mention that as well.
Super quick. As part of teachers' professional learning plans, this was one of the options that teachers can work on. And I just to echo Julie's point about the codes of power, there's real power in students having exposure to the Guggenheim, to the Met, cultural, social power. So thank you.
Plays, theater, the more we can do.
The add with world languages, yes, like the 5th graders go to Flushing. At the high school, the Mandarin classes also went to Chinatown. They had a whole tour. The other languages, if there are opportunities for performances and plays, they have taken them in as well. The one thing we're trying to develop, since ENL is here, is more field trips for the ENL population, specific for them. Last year, and that's a goal we're working on this year. So last year, the teachers at the elementary school asked if they could plan a trip to the Long Island Children's Museum. And it was twofold. It was to give them the exposure, to connect the content with what they were doing there, but also to connect them with the other schools. So it was 3 elementary schools because they all feed into the middle school, but they don't know each other. And it's a small population. And so they went to the Long Island Children's Museum, and then we had a visit from the museum here. And it was a great opportunity to connect the children as well as give them the experience. This year, so that's now, okay, what are we doing every year? Can we try to do 2 trips? So this year we are looking into a theater workshop experience. We were going out, we had looked into a place that the teachers had looked into, however, it closed. So we're actually going in-house, and Michael Kleba is working with the teachers to create a theater workshop experience. And that also gives the students an opportunity to express themselves, feelings, and it doesn't involve language. It can, but it doesn't have to, so they can all participate. So we're trying to implement that.
Briefly, that I know Miss Etter last year was looked to bring and brought kids in to go see Hamilton in the city too. I was looking at social studies, but also an opportunity that being this close provides. We also had our first year of a urban studies course, which focuses on New York City. That was an elective offered to students, and we have a small group of enrollment for that. And that was Mr. Blanchard's been running that. So we're looking for opportunities, but I agree, take more advantage of it. Absolutely.
And again, K through 5.
That we've been echoing it. The board wants field trips, right? We say it very frequently. I don't think we've seen like a huge increase in field trips, which is probably why we keep saying it. But it's something that we really, really want for our kids.
We say K through 8 Because I think we're hearing.
K,
a lot-
K
yeah,
through
I know.
12?
Yeah, K through 12.
Yes.
And, you know, we talked about this idea that during the summer, we could do like field trip summer, like with the summer program, now you're generating revenue, right? So there are lots of different ways that we can do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be during the school day.
Just piggybacking on that, I'm certain that the first time I was in a theater was with the school program, like the first time I saw the inside. And I mean, the city's great, but for the smaller kids, like the Tillis Center is phenomenal, and there's a million things. So I'll echo my colleagues and thank you all for this tremendous, not only the presentation, but the backup material, which I feel like I get a master's degree on topics that I, you know, just from reading through. If some of my comments seem challenging, it's not at all meant to be disparaging. It's more just we're doing so great. And so I look for the ways that I think I can provide thoughts that maybe make us greater, which I don't know that I can, but I just want to preface, you know, if it seems challenging, it comes from a deeply respectful place of the work that you do that I think is so important and obviously very successful. So my overall question with a lot of these things is how will we know we're successful? I kept thinking that through a bunch of these things, in particular with like the digital portfolios and a couple other touch points that came on. There's some very specific questions I have with respect to ELA. And I noticed in the backup material, there seemed to be a challenge within the 6th grade cohort, particularly with some jumping with the numbers. And there was a very big difference that you articulated in your summaries. When I think about some of the remediation is the wrong word, but our change in our approach in the science of reading, anecdotally, I've heard from many parents, like there was always kids who were going to learn no matter what if you put letters in front of them in a certain pattern. And it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that where Teachers College is letting us down is in that 3rd, 4th grade cohort when it's separating the wheat from the chaff, and some kids are just, and I'm hearing from parents at this 4th and 5th grade level that their kids didn't get flagged. They're finding that they now have needs in learning, and they're frustrated with us because they thought everything was fine all along. So I'm just wondering, along with this science of learning switch, how much our eye is on the, you know, changing where we're intervening and where we're involving Chris Marino and his special ed team and getting, you know, letting the rubber hit the road to help these kids earlier and longer, because we know obviously the earlier we intervene, the better. I don't know if do you want to start there, or do you want like all my questions at once?
I'll start with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right, Lisa, that early intervention is the best way that we can handle these problems. This year, we did actually make a slight shift from DIBELS Next to DIBELS 8, because DIBELS 8 is really recognized by University of Oregon as being a dyslexia screener. So we did DIBELS training for all our teachers K through 2. Actually, we made it optional, and then they all said yes, which was really awesome. And then we actually required the switch to DIBELS 8 in kindergarten this year. And we're no longer doing Fontes and Pinnell in kindergarten. And then we left it optional for grades 1 and 2 because we didn't want to kind of like pull the rug out from under them or destabilize them. So we just left it optional for this year. And we are looking at other screeners. That's part of our work in the district literacy team, to look at all kinds of screeners that would really identify students early on. We do have, foundations. We do have Heggerty. We added Heggerty to grade 1. That's our phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. So we are putting things in place that, you're right, like catching them early on is really the key.
And so will we know we're successful because we will be classifying more kids? I don't know if that's the stupid question. Like, how do we know?
Well, it's interesting. As part of our training, one of the things they talked about very early on was setting a very stringent goal early on. And that goal was that it was 95% of our kids in first grade would be proficient. So obviously very high goal. And as part of our analysis and work with this LETTERS program, we're really looking at kind of all these cogs in the wheel. We're looking at universal instruction, intervention, assessment, all of the aspects of a literacy program, and trying to look at making sure our program is comprehensive so that we're catching those kids early on, providing that intervention so that we won't have to identify as many kids later on, so that they're getting what they need K1, 2, and hopefully then won't be needing that intervention anymore, and they'll be reading on grade level and hopefully beyond grade level. So it's kind of really targeting particularly K1, 2, giving them what they need, and then hoping, and then obviously monitoring them, but then we wouldn't need to identify as many kids.
And am I understanding you correctly then that the tools that we're implementing now are better at differentiating kids' different styles of learning and then acclimating in that way? Do you know what I mean? Like it's just, is that
Yeah, I think it's really about in those early grades, getting the right assessments, really progress monitoring, and using what we're learning about with that, the reading rope, looking at each aspect of a child's reading development. If there is a problem, knowing it, and then really giving that targeted instruction to address the particular problem that the child is having so that, they can move forward to become a fluent reader.
So while you're up there, do you want to talk a little bit about that 6th grade cohort and what kind of interventions that you're considering for them, or, how you assess the situation there?
Yeah, we're just looking at a lot of assessments. We're looking at different universal screeners. We haven't gotten there yet. That's probably going to be next year's thing. We're thinking of, are we going to stay with Dibbles 8? Are we going to move? Some districts use iReady, but there's pros and cons of that. Some districts use AimsWeb. We really have to do a comprehensive study. I don't think that we can just say we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We like Dibbles 8 a lot. They added a fluency part. All of the subtests test into these very specific areas, so give us a lot of information. But we really want to do our due diligence before we commit, because there's many things out there and we want to see what's really the best thing for us.
I do want to just note, any of the cohorts right now, especially K through 8, are benefiting from our MTSS plan, so that, however students are performing, we do use the STAR assessment and other in-class assessments. So regardless of how they perform on the state assessment, interventions are given at different tiered levels based on how they perform. We're looking at, like Ms. Ritter and Dr. Smith are saying, into changing those, making those more precise. But if, for example, this cohort certain students didn't perform well, we would progress monitor them throughout the year and give more intensive interventions before the point of referral to special education, with the hope of bringing them back to grade level of those skills.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. We actually have a very robust data system. We have data days in the elementary school where each child is looked at individually, all of those tests. We added the foundations, unit exams this year for the first time. They were optional last year. We're requiring them this year for foundations, in addition to, as Chris said, the STAR and those students who have taken the ELA assessment, the New York State assessment. And we use those, multiple data points. We kind of triangulate them to kind of assess the child and use the teacher's input. But each child is looked at individually.
Really, do you just want to add about AIS at the middle school?
Yeah, so at AIS in the middle school, we have the push-in model for the Tier 1 students to support the teachers, because we're still doing a lot of that one-on-one conferencing. Then we have standalone reading classes for the Tier 2 and 3 students. Those students who are identified maybe by the WIST first by teacher recommendation and by the STAR, maybe their FNP, and then ultimately by the WIST is seen having decoding problems. We will do a decoding program, maybe like a Wilson or Wilson-esque kind of program with decoding. And those students who are struggling with reading comprehension, we focus on reading comprehension skills. And those reading classes are standalone classes every other day.
So thank you for all this. I really appreciate you answering all my questions. With respect to this new extension, the extension class, which Lord knows I wish that my 8th grade, I have a 5th grader, so next year. But, you mentioned that grades aren't part of it. So again, this how will we know we're successful question kept popping in my head. So what are you looking at for knowing that that program is successful? Obviously it will be, but
I think it's really the students' reports of and the team so the teachers have team meetings in the middle school. They get together with the major subjects and they discuss the students and the curriculum and their testing. As a matter of fact, the English teachers know when the students have their science test, and they'll use like the science test as like a study example kind of thing. And I think it's really talking to the teachers and seeing how they're observing that informal formative assessments that they're seeing, and then there's on their summative assessments as well.
a couple social studies thoughts. Oh no, my last thing for ELA was I noticed in the backup material, sorry, that there was a bunch of special events. I've recently become very interested in the differences between the elementary schools and kind of mindful of the shared experiences between the buildings. And it looked kind of disparate. I have to say, like when I was kind of checking boxes for this one has this, I just want to highlight that it's of interest to me that we're creating, like they're siblings, they're not twins, but like shared experiences throughout the 3 elementary schools.
That's such a good point. Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's something we're working as a reading team. I'm working really strong with my interventionalists to really kind of unify the way the 3 buildings are approaching their interventions in that way. But you're right about the experiences, but I have to confess, this is only my 3rd month in the elementary schools. So it's really possible that I missed some things. I really don't know all the events that are occurring at the elementary schools. So it's possible that I missed some.
Very fair. I just, I have this particular microphone, so I sometimes wield it for my own kind of interests, which, like I said, this whole elementary school kind of trying to figure out, that they land on similar footing in 6th grade together. I don't think that they're not necessarily. I shouldn't suggest that, but I look for that lately. Okay. I know I'm taking up too much time, but that's just so fascinating. With the social studies, I have to say, like, I bristled a little bit because it's counterintuitive for this very authentic learning priority that we have to like probably what motivated Trustee Mosca's question to analyze this test and the questions of the test as opposed to like the approach of the learning. But having said that, I completely understand and respect, your stance. Who is making these tests? Like, who is in charge?
Well, there is a New York State team and they hire teachers to help them write the questions. So there are teachers that are creating them, and the reality, even with my own teachers, is these are very difficult questions to create because you got to find text that aligns to the framework, aligns to the content. And one of the rules kind of has been from the ELA. It started with the ELA test when the state got sued. You can't change the text because you changed the meaning, and the authors were getting upset by that. And you couldn't excerpt things mid-paragraph because that also changed the meaning. So one of the impacts that has had on social studies is they're leaving the original text and the original language. And we know when you're teaching U.S. history, like I was talking with Mr. Blanchard the other day, and it was like, he's like, one of the things for him, it's easier to look at a 20th, 21st century text with kids because it's in language they understand. But we start the year teaching them sometimes about the Constitution, and that's a language that's almost foreign to them now. how that was written. So sometimes they're using these original texts and they're very challenging. And the same thing could happen of global, right? You're looking at texts throughout different parts of the world, across different places that are already probably translated, so there's a challenge in, just how do they construct it for teachers that I don't think is easy. I don't know that they apply readability calculators to it. Sometimes you'll find a text, oh, that doesn't seem that hard. Or the reality is, if you just knew the content, like it used to be when I would tutor kids, be like, if you saw Peter the Great come up, you would just pick Westernization, ignore everything else. And so sometimes kids can oh, I know this is going to be the answer. I'll ignore the text. And that's a little more challenging now, but sometimes it's, they're trying to find and write good questions for it. There's not a lot of practice for it, and which ones get selected or screened or who's even doing. I know districts, sometimes it's like who even gets the field testing for this type of stuff. So sometimes, we heard arguments from different leaders of social studies on Long Island, like, do you send all the special ed kids or all the AP kids to take this test so that way you give feedback towards a certain that's too hard? Like who do we send for this? It's like, well, we send all the special ed kids so then they know the questions are too hard. But then it's like, then we have all our special ed kids getting pulled out and doing field tests. Like, is that fair to them? So there's all these questions that I don't know that we agree on what's the best approach to see if we can fix these things. And there are some people that kind of are, well, maybe they'll just see the data and they'll make it easier in the next run. That it's there. We provided feedback to the state. I just don't know that they're listening.
Thank you for that. I did want to just mention how important and valued the work regarding civil discourse is. I thought that was so wonderful to see as a priority moving forward. You can't really underemphasize, and the analysis of data, I think it's exactly what the world needs now. So I just wanted to highlight that and express my gratitude for that one. And then with respect to languages, I wanted to offer that I've been to the events that you had last year that highlighted different ELL culture night, the families, and it's some of my favorite time. I've brought my kids, my middle schooler demanded that we went, and we had fun each time. And I think that visibility is so important. I encourage everybody who can attend. Are we doing it again this calendar year? Yes. Oh, great. So we'll have to make sure that's loud and proud. Is it here? Okay, great. Please. Okay. Well, I'll very much look forward to that. Thank you for that. I found one more note. Sorry, guys. Thank you. Which was with respect to the English extension. I'm just wondering if there's if we see that this is so successful and the kids are really learning amazing study habits, will we be able to identify maybe kids who didn't get it, who are older, and kind of help them? Is there an opportunity to kind of catch them up? Yeah, potentially. I don't know.
We have a similar course in ninth grade. It's our ninth grade research lab. So it's a little bit more focused on research, but they also do a little bit of time management. Not to the same extent though, but that's a good idea. I do like that idea.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your suggestions.
Thank you I appreciate the opportunity.
Quick, I just wanted to say we are looking at K through 12 study skills as part of our North Shore Journey goals for this year. Carol and I.
My turn, right? It's really, I was just at a convention last month and I did an 8-hour workshop with Richard Gallagher, who's one of the leading ADHD researchers. And it was really fascinating. And a decent portion of the workshop was on specific materials that you have students buy to help them organize themselves. And one of the things that he does, it's like a big clinic at NYU, it's part of Child Study Center, is an accordion folder. And they feel, and I kept thinking oh my gosh, these are the things that our students should be buying, not all of these folders, this one according folder that has all, and it was, I'll send you a picture of like everything that they said to get. And I thought, wow, like, are we collaborating between special education and whoever the team leader is who are picking these materials, thinking about how to best prepare and organize their materials? I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Okay. One of the questions I really wanted to ask, but you answered it in many ways, is what was different this year from everything that we talked about last year? And in each of your areas, it was so clear that you incorporated our feedback and our questions and our concerns and really like pushed your programs forward this year. I mean, it's really unbelievable. I was thinking before I saw your presentation, like, is it just going to be a duplication of what we did last year? And this was not. So kudos to you. I'm so impressed with all of you. I want to talk a little bit about history, though I think some of what I'm going to say might overlap with all of the areas. In terms of like the global exam, for instance, like a quarter of our special education students are not passing the exam. And maybe we need to start doing an analysis of that group that's not passing, right? So there's one theory they're not passing because the reading levels are too advanced, right? We need to like work backwards. What are the accommodations these students are having on their IEPs? So if we take those 17 students in special education who took the global exam, the 3/4 that passed, do they have specific reading accommodations that those who did not pass have? And I think we could be doing this for each of our tests, where you go in and you almost create like a predictive model of what disabilities are at risk, right? Because special education is not a homogeneous group. So what disabilities are at risk, and what, based upon our analysis, are the accommodations that seem to make the biggest difference? Now, if you look at the research, often people are asking for extended test time, but actually that's not really the accommodation that's the most effective for them. And so I think we need to be looking at, is it the assisted tech? Is it a reader? Is it a scribe? What is it that's helping the students that pass, and what is missing in the students that aren't passing?
I know sometimes, and this will be something, I think, because I think there's a ton of validity to what you're asking. One of the things is sometimes I create a proactive AIS class where I identify students that I think are going to struggle, because we use the midterms as a diagnostic and we use classroom performance. And then I have a body of kids that I think are going to do it. And then they sometimes just refuse the service of going into the AIS because it's an extra class or an extra support. So one of the challenges is just getting that, here we've identified certain things, it's a willingness to do it. Sometimes we have kids that'll have the extra time or the extra things and some of the strategies, and they won't use them. So there is a challenge too that we're working at, is not only knowing that, but also it's a case by case with kids. Because sometimes it's like, we know the strategy, but how do you get that student to be willing to do it? Because some of these tests are very challenging, right? Like if you're doing a 3-hour reading test, that's not a normal, typical experience. And sometimes we would find a kid would do really well on the first part and then would peter out. And it's like, how can we get that same level of things? We've had, a variety of different approaches. And I think it's always looking at system-wide, but two, it's also got to be looking at it individual. Because what is this student that's doing it, and how can we best support them on their journey too, in collaboration with the special ed teachers and the classroom teachers as well.
So much of like passing these regions and passing the classes really hinge on students' reading ability, right? And not just their ability to decode, but their ability, their reading comprehension ability, right? Like, so if you have a specific disorder of reading, that can be in actual reading, right? And in terms of comprehension. And that's why I think when we're looking at these screeners, things like Sally Shaywitz is another good screener, but also in terms of the assessment instrument. And I'm worried we're using the screeners, but we are not using the proper assessment instruments. Like the CTOPS would be one. Even better is the Pfeiffer assessment of reading, which I know they have started incorporating more. But in terms of, hey, you could have 10 kids who have specific disorder of reading, right? But the breakdown is in different places, and the screener does not tell you that. Only tests like the Pfeiffer, which are going into things like orthographic processing or phonemic awareness, or those specific skills that you're looking at in the science of reading, right? Like all those little puzzle pieces are coming together to allow people to read normally, right? But when there is a breakdown, where is that breakdown? And unless you are doing like the further testing, you don't know. And then everyone's getting the one size fits all intervention, which doesn't make sense, right?
You mentioned the Pfeiffer assessments, and I was just, I think it was yesterday, talking to our new middle school psychologist, Dr. Walsh, who has a lot of experience with both the FAR and the FAM. And we were talking about exactly that. How do we then take, once we give we were talking specifically about math in this situation. So we give the FAM, we know there's a dyscalculia issue, but how are we going to then take that information from the report that we get and figure out exactly what to do with the particular information to give the child what they need to remediate that particular skill or concept or process.
And there's one for writing too. There are 3 of them, right? And so it's all computer scored, and then it prints out the interventions, right? Like it's not just what the breakdown is, but I think it gives you suggestions on where the target, like how to target the interventions.
Again, I was meeting with the math team, and we were consulting with Dr. Walsh, and she showed us exactly, it comes out with very specific student-centered, student-specific interventions, and also suggested programs that we could implement. So that specificity was helpful for us as a math team, but also in terms of reading. So I think really leveraging those really precise assessments will be kind of the next step for us.
That's where we have to go. And we have to do it at an early age because the accommodations need to be correct, right? They need to be appropriate, and they need to be in place before they start taking these state exams, especially if we think the part of the non-mastery is due to the reading level, right? Okay. In terms of our ELL students, I'm very interested in just knowing, are the children happy? Go. Oh, they can leave that. Yeah. No.
I do think the teachers are the best ones to answer that. Are they happy? They are, but they struggle. They're still isolated at times. And, teachers do the best they can to integrate them, but they're lost. I had Isabella, who came in September, first day, and she was hysterical by the main office. Amanda was there, I was there. Okay, we got her off. And throughout the day, she came back to my office just in tears. Fast forward a week, and she came to my office, and she actually fell asleep for 2 periods. It's too much input, and people don't realize just, all that input. She went to gym. She picked me up, and she was afraid to go. She was at the weight room. And her and I stand and she goes, please don't make me go. Please don't make me go. So it's a tough transition. They're at different levels. They can't do the, we talk about the extracurricular. It's hard for them. They may not have a ride to get home. They have to work. They have to take care of a sibling. So we try to give them, they did the Pulsera project. They were so excited to do this project. They had a stand by the cafeteria. They interact, and it was very hard for them, but they interacted with other students. So they're happy, but they're struggling.
Yeah. 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 It sounds like more professional development. It sounds like we need to make sure that they're getting their piece of the pie here, whether they need their own safe space that's separate that they can go to, that's, just for them in the building. So if they have if they need to get away from all the stimulation, they can. And it definitely, what you said, we need to find counselors who speak their language. And I don't think that's going to be difficult to do if we contract with some type of online service, right? That would have that available for them.
Counseling, and the counseling is critical. We introduced the bilingual counseling a few years ago. We received money from a fund, immigrant fund grant actually, and we piloted the bilingual counseling. But we have a waiting list. Like the kids might need a counselor, but we don't have enough time. So we wait list them,
That's for the Spanish speaking?
for the Spanish. And for years, actually, we've been looking for counselors we were looking at Mandarin, and we just could not find them. I mean, I worked closely with the bilingual counselor, Mark Fernandez, who helped us a lot during COVID. And for years, we have been trying to find a Mandarin counselor, and that has been a struggle. And then now Ukrainian, now there are other languages.
Right. And so we'll bring this up at wellness on Monday. And you also are working with this trauma psychologist who might be a really good asset. And I guess the last thing that I'll just talk about is these students who also have co-occurring disabilities. You need special tests to assess in their language. And do we have that here? And do we have a group of psychologists who are able to assess in that language?
That has been a challenge. When they do test them, they go out of district, they go for a bilingual testing, but the testing isn't normed. And when it came back, it showed it didn't show any information. So the test that they use is not valid. It doesn't show anything, and they argue that it's a language issue and not a disability. So the teachers work with the students day in and day out. They provide supports. They tier the support, and we only suggest, refer, it's like this could be a disability. But the testing that is out there, that at least that we have, used, has been inconclusive, and doesn't really identify the disability and doesn't really support to help us.
And so you're using, who are you using? You're using like a agency?
Well, I don't know the details. It's
Okay,
through the
it's through
special ed
special ed.
department.
Okay.
So I don't know the details. I just know that when the test came back, they told us that because it's not normed, there was no information. I mean, you might know more about how the test comes back. I don't.
I think what we're finding is that bilingual evaluations are the quality, the accessibility, there are issues there. So we might want to include this in our special ed review that we're about to do. That could be, and maybe, setting up time to meet, with your department, Anna, and some parents who have gone through that.
It's really about the
bilingual eval.
testing, and I don't think it's anyone's fault other than what's out there.
But
we've
they
been
have
using.
all the tests are translated. So they have translated tests. I don't know if they're using that.
They are, but there are other issues, even if it is translated. I think there are like system issues that and discrepancies that arise even if they have access to a translated test.
Maybe I could find out, like help you a little bit with that. Like, that seems like it shouldn't be. Okay, that I have so many questions, but that's it. It's late. Thank you so much, everybody. We were so impressed. I don't even have to talk to everybody on the side. I know everybody was going to say that in the morning, how impressed we are with the students and the faculty in your presentations. So please feel free to leave. Yeah.
Us?
Yeah.
I the spot.
All right, thank you. I will now open up the floor for public comments. If anybody has any public comments, come on down. I know. Okay, I will close the floor for public comments. We're now going to move, I'm going to take 11A and 12A and B. It's an agreement between the North Shore Administrators Council. I don't know. Let's take a motion first and then we can talk.
Motion.
All right, and I heard a second. Chris, I don't know if you just want to explain these two or three, really.
Sure, 11 and 12.
Yeah.
And 12A and B. So Action 11, we did come to an agreement with our administrators for a memorandum of agreement to then turn into an executed contract. So I want to thank Dr. Smythe, Mr. Pappas, our legal team, and the administrators for working through this. These are difficult to negotiate during times of financial stress, but thank you. We came to a great agreement. Thank you to our board for all of your support. And then also Action 12, we are formally reorganizing the secondary math position into a K through 12 position because we have a great new K through 12 director who I swear to, this is the longest meeting of the year, I promise.
To scare
This
her
is
off.
not the mean. This is not the mean.
Not this year. Yeah.
Are you sure you want to make that promise? Chris?
But I said this morning, what did I say? I said this is gonna be a long meeting. Okay. Any other comments on 11 and 12? All in favor? Okay, excellent. Now we have our personnel, Action 13, A through H, including our appointment of Kimberly Matz, Director of Math K through 12. So I have a motion. Okay, any questions or comments?
Warm welcome. We're
Yeah,
delighted
warm
to have
welcome.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hopefully we didn't scare you tonight.
I'm using it next year, but he might not come again.
Like the Madrigals, we don't play either. Okay, all in favor? Okay, excellent. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Action 14, and you are welcome to leave.
Yes.
Yeah. leave.
You've served your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna. Okay, action 14, A and B, these are change orders. Motion?
Motion.
All right, excellent. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Okay, we're gonna do action 15, A through C. A motion? Okay, excellent. Questions, comments? This does include, I don't know, go ahead, Miriam.
I was just gonna ask Chris to talk a little bit about the Joe DeGrone contract.
Sure. Thank you. As we know, at the beginning of the school year, we had some communications from residents for an independent budget review. I received the emails. Mr. Pappas and I talked a lot about them. Tried to, I asked some questions back, and we really tried to, figure out the best kind of review, what we needed. We really felt like getting to the heart of anything we might be missing lie in a deep analysis of our per pupil costs, which is something we've talked a lot about over the years, and per pupil costs compared to other districts, and in different categories: instructional, non-instructional, special education, athletics, all of our curricular areas. And then someone who could then give us recommendations based on a comparative analysis. So what Mr. Dragone will be doing is looking at per pupil costs in all these different areas compared to other neighboring districts like Manhasset, like Roslyn and Herricks, districts that have different programs, might have made different choices, and then to give us recommendations. We're also working with software called Forecast 5, and we're going to have a presentation when this is all said and done. We did talk to some outside folks who work in school finance who do big forecasts. There's also a cost factor. And we felt, given the experience of Mr. Dragone, his all of his experience in school business in Roslyn, in now teaching in Hofstra, writing for Newsday, really being kind of like an advisor to school business officials, that experience is exactly what we needed to do work that Jamie and the team wouldn't have time to do, but that met the need that our community was calling for, and really to touch on things that we've been talking about for years, and that can help us build this like non-instructional strategic plan to support the strategic plan, given what we're going through.
Be an instructional component of it, right? Because the purpose is not, I don't think anyone is questioning that the business department is doing their job or doing it properly, right? The question is, where could we get more efficiencies?
That's kind of why we're looking at the per pupil within all those specific areas, because that's where that question applied to all the instructional areas and the non-instructional areas we feel like can help us reveal what those solutions might be. So we think, and especially when you look at a comparative analysis, we're looking at total spending, a comparative analysis, and a comparative analysis within all of those areas. And we feel like when you look at it both ways, we will see some things. And I think it'll also reveal the things that are just what they are because we're a smaller district. It'll highlight those things that are just like overhead issues. The per pupil spending, for example, Locust Valley and Cold Spring Harbor are much higher than us because they're smaller. So there's certain things like the cost of heating a building that are going to be the same. That's going to be the same regardless if you have a 743 student high school like we have, or an 1,800 student high school. So we do feel like that looking at both will help, and then the comparative analysis of our neighbors who achieve like we do or like we want to will highlight some of those things, and also program options, how they structure programs at all levels.
It's a question, just from the comparative analysis. Can you just reiterate who and how we're comparing ourselves to?
Sure. So we are. It's kind of a two.
To the degree you're comfortable.
Yeah. It's a two-step process. We're looking in all of those different areas, the instructional departments, non-instructional areas, even like buildings and grounds,
at the per pupil cost. And then we're comparing that to districts that surround us in those same categories. And then asking for recommendations based on that analysis.
You had mentioned just now Locust Valley and Cold Spring Harbor. Are those two?
No, those were not. We're looking at Roslyn, Manhasset, Herricks, Jericho, and Syosset.
Acid.
Yeah.
Okay. From my perspective, when this was first proposed, I liked the idea of trying to understand more and be more efficient. My concern was that it would be someone who didn't understand what we're doing here, educating kids, and my concern would be the cost of those things. So I think you've addressed those in finding this person, and so I'm looking forward to enthusiastically raising my hand in a couple seconds. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mary?
I ditto to what you said, and
sorry.
he sounds like a great choice.
Thank you.
I know you worked really hard on this and really spoke to a lot of people about it. So thank you. Yeah. All right. All in favor? We now move to unfinished business. Anybody?
I have a quick thing. Anyone else need? Okay. I was looking over the minutes, actually, Betty's wonderful minutes, and noticed this is from the November 30th meeting, and was reminded that Jason Hill spoke about pickleball and his offer of free clinics for interested students. And I just wanted to put it on the radar, sort of add it to that list that Don Lang already had. I was happy to see included things like fencing and badminton, of course, but this is such a new and exciting field, sport for a lot of people, and it seemed like it could be a great opportunity, and I'm just hoping it doesn't get lost.
I did talk to Mr. Hill the next day about the separation of pickleball and state, because he is crazed. It is, I think, quasi-religious for him, but no, there are curricula out there for pickleball, for PE, so we will definitely continue to look into it.
I say to you again, USTA Eastern has some of that stuff, and I'm sure there is a pickleball association as well that
Definitely
probably
looking
has
into
grant money,
recess, PE curriculum, and then intramurals.
even to get the equipment.
Maria, do you want to talk about the legislative breakfast at all?
I was going to, but I'm going to put it all in an email. So, but yes, now that you brought it up, I'll just mention so everybody knows.
Let people know it's happening.
Well, I think I did I not do that? Did I not send? Yes. Okay. Of course. So we are confirmed for Tuesday the 19th for our legislative breakfast. All of our legislators, but one, I think, have replied that they are coming. And I think all of us and all but one of our LAC members are definite as well. So it will be really well attended. We are going to hold it in our transportation depot in order partly to make sure that the legislators who are coming understand what we're talking about when we describe the situation that we're dealing with the abandoned, the closed power plant. And hope that will also make an impression on them. And I'll be sending an email. Details have been coming together every day this week. We've been working really hard on a lot of little things that felt important, and we'll be starting early, so be prepared.
Thank you both for that. I mean, the amount of emails and a lot of details. I'm very impressed.
You weren't even copied on half of them.
I just read them. I don't respond. You guys have it covered.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
All right. Anything else? Nothing else? All right. I will adjourn the meeting. Happy. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you said that was old business.
All right. You want new business?
You didn't do new
New business?
Yeah, just really quickly,
Yeah.
it's not a discussion, it's something I want to raise here. I know this has been brought up other places, but not here from this dais. I just want to confirm the Athletic Policy Committee will be addressing the role of parent conduct. That's something that's come up in boosters and elsewhere.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that from this dais.
They're new business. All right. Well, everyone enjoy the new year.
You.
And thank you all for
You.
staying late.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Get to bed.
Let's see you Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, we got that too.
Something like that.